Probably one of the most anticipated games of its generation, The Last of Us Part 2 unfortunately received backlash for its story right before its release and after. But despite this game won Game of the Year in 2020. Lots of people think that different games deserve this, mostly siding with Ghost of Tsushima. But what exactly made The Last of Us Part 2 so controversial? In this game, we are going to analyze the entire game, start to finish. I will summarize the scene then after giving my 2 cents on the topic at hand. Keep in mind, if you have never played this game before, this is your spoiler warning. Everything I'm going to say in this video is going to spoil at least something, so proceed at your own risk. Let it be known that I'm a die-hard The Last of Us fan. I love the world, the characters, and the plot of the first game, so you may think that I'll be biased, and trust me, you will be surprised. So without further ado, grab some popcorn, follow my Twitch, grab a drink, and let's dive straight into the video.
What the hell are you doing here?
Kicking off the story is Joel sitting down cleaning his guitar, and across from him is Tommy. Essentially what happens here is a recap of what happened in the previous game, a refresher. I found this to be quite helpful for someone who's new to this series or hasn't played the first game in a while. This will help them get up to speed with the story at hand. Joel details what had happened at the hospital, him literally taking out all of the fireflies, grabbing Ellie for his own selfish reasons, and then taking out Marlene. Knowing that this is pretty brutal, Tommy takes this in an uneasy manner and tells Joel that they should head back to Jackson. If you guys can't remember, Jackson's the town that is run by Tommy and Maria. During this time, he plays Joel, taking in the scenery with a nice score playing in the background. I do want to say that the visuals in this game are absolutely incredible. The only game that can top this, in my opinion, would be Horizon Forbidden West. Though it doesn't seem like it through YouTube compression and loss of HDR when converting to an MP4 format, this game, technically speaking, is a masterpiece in its own right. Interiors are well filled with decorations, flora, fauna are abundant, and the amount of detail when it comes to level design is insane. The devs that created this game visually need a round of applause. To go further on that loss of HDR when recording, this causes blacks to be deeper and icky looking. This goes away in later recordings when I turn this feature off, so keep in mind if things look a little ugly in the beginning, it's because of me, not the game. When Joel and Tommy finally get to town, there is a couple of words shared that are important. Tommy understands the lengths at which Joel went to save Ellie, not to mention he knows Joel's past when it comes to Sarah. So with this, Tommy says that he will take Joel's lie to the grave, specifically because if he were in Joel's shoes, he would have done the exact same thing. This shows the incredible amount of trust between the two brothers, which builds the foundation of the plot in a way. A transition happens to where we see Ellie doing her own thing, doodling and listening to music. An important thing not only for in-game reasons, but it also builds Ellie's personality that is shown almost all the time through the game. To start out, this conversation is a little awkward to say the least. Joel is scared to talk to Ellie after the lie he told her. So, in order to ease the tension, he tries to tell Ellie a dad joke but forgets the joke halfway through. This is me every time I try to be funny around my friends. It always ends up in pain and loneliness. Joel has a surprise for Ellie though. He pulls out the guitar he was cleaning and gives it to her as a gift. This very guitar is an important plot point for way later in the game, so keep that fresh in your mind. There is a little mini game where you strum the guitar. If you know how to play the guitar, you can certainly have fun with this. For me at least, I suck a lot. Joel then plays an important Pearl Jam song that I probably can't play because of copyright, even though Joel's singing it, so I'm not going to risk that. But I will say that it was a beautiful scene, and seeing Ellie's reaction to it was pretty heartwarming. She compliments Joel in her own cute way, saying that his performance didn't suck, which I agree with. That shit was gas, especially from someone that grew up in the PNW. I love my Pearl Jam, Nirvana, and Alice in Chains. But after this scene, the title screen shows with a dreadful chord playing in the background, pretty much signifying that this game isn't going to be for the lighthearted, and I sincerely mean that. If you're queasy to blood and violence, this video probably isn't for you. There's some really sickening scenes here, even during the beginning. So throughout this video, I'm going to try my best to not analyze summarize literally every sentence. If I find something important to talk about, I will, but if I did it to everything, this video would be longer than a feature film. Regardless, we play as Ellie 4 years later. She wakes up by the banging on the door of a certain individual, Jesse, pretty much the head of patrol in Jackson. Ellie gets dressed and suits up, explores the town, goes into a pub, and an awkward scene happens where a dude apologizes to Ellie for making some insensitive comments about her sexuality. To comment on this briefly, Ellie as a gay character is no problem whatsoever, and if you find it problematic, well, I encourage you to go into the real world and understand that these people exist. If you still have a problem with it, I heard therapy is a great place to be. The point I'm trying to make is, if a character is gay, there's nothing bad about that at all. Problems arise though when there is a character whose sole personality is their sexuality. If there's no depth to this character other than that, I will have a problem with it and criticize it. But since we have already spent a game and a DLC with Ellie, that isn't going to be an issue. Actually, in this game, Ellie probably has more depth behind her than the previous game in the series, better or for worse. Backing away from this tangent, I should probably mention this. During a conversation with Jesse, we find out that Ellie and Joel aren't on good terms. Apparently, Joel came to defend Ellie from the dude that said some not cool things, resulting in Joel pushing the dude back and causing a scene. Ellie got mad at him for that, and that brings us here, the next day. Ellie even states that she has no idea why she got mad at Joel for doing that, but we the player know. It's heavily implied that Ellie found out about Joel's lie. We don't get confirmation of that until later, but it is important to mention it now. This brings us to a little combat tutorial before Ellie goes on patrol. It takes the form of a snowball fight with some kids alongside Dina, Ellie's love interest. Well, I guess saying that this is a combat tutorial is probably being generous. I guess this is a way to make the player gradually get acclimated to the combat system, which I appreciate to some degree. It isn't the best by any means, but it gets its point across. I think I just liked doming kids with snowballs over anything else. But after this is another conversation that has to do with a kiss, the same night as the Joel incident, making this whole thing connected. This scene just has some simple banter back and forth, but nothing important. I will say that this does feel like some high school shit, but considering Ellie in this game is like 18 to 19, it makes sense. Regardless, Ellie and Dina go on their way on patrol, but a transition then occurs to a different character we haven't seen before, Abby. And oh my god, is this chick built like a brick shithouse? I actually envy her protein intake and rigorous training program. Liver King needs to take a few notes from this chick. The thing to mention here though is that they're in the same area as the settlement in Jackson, so one can assume that they're there for that specific reason, to see if someone is in that specific settlement or at least scout out the place. I'm assuming people watching this has already played the game, so I'm just gonna come out and say it. Abby's here to take out Joel. Abby used to be a Firefly, so her reasoning is justified, but there is a coincidence here. How in the absolute living hell did they find out where he is? Did they get a tip from someone? Was there clues left behind? I have no idea, and that bugs me, though we do find out later, and even that bugs me. The entire plot is based on how Abby found Joel, and when that plot point isn't believable, then that makes the entire story not believable. Keep that in your mind. That is a really important statement I just made. I am taking this as a video game logic, but if your game prides itself on realism, then you need to treat your game as realistic. This is far from it. No one in their right mind is going to figure out where Joel is located 4 years after the incident at the hospital. This point by itself brings the game down badly, and I'm not even going to try to sugarcoat it. Once again, I mean that. Keep this in the back of your mind. But going further, this man named Owen tells Abby that he needs to show her something. The two eventually travel to a cliffside that overlooks the Jackson settlement. Now, this worries Abby and Owen, rightfully so, but as they're looking at the city, Owen tells Abby that Mel is pregnant, a woman that is back at the shelter where they were just at. This angers Abby, which causes her to scout out ahead alone, but before this, they were arguing about how they were going to even be able to infiltrate the settlement and get to Joel. Abby's gung-ho, Owen's reserved. This whole Mel being pregnant plotline is important for sure, but it also feels out of place for somewhat odd reasons. It's another coincidence in order to cause doubt in Abby's mind, which then leads her to find Joel on her own soon, which then in turn is another coincidence. Do you see where I'm going with this? This game constantly runs on coincidences, and this is in no way how to structure a narrative. Let's take a look at The Witcher 3 for instance, since that's the last game I've been playing religiously. Within that game, Geralt is actively looking for Ciri, going from Velen to Novigrad to Skellige. The narrative connecting those three locations is so good because there's no coincidence, and if there is, it doesn't matter because they're hidden very well. To explain, when Geralt finds Yennefer, it's because a note was left telling Geralt to meet at a certain location. Yennefer comes to that location with a battalion of Nilfgaard soldiers because it was established in the previous game that she's been captured by Nilfgaard. so it's not a coincidence. When Geralt finds Triss in Novigrad, it's because she was forced into hiding from the Redanian witch hunt. This caused her to take up secret jobs in order to make coin, so she went to the King of Beggars, which in turn is how Geralt found her. Not a coincidence, it makes sense given the circumstances. There's a lot more examples I can give that would make sense, but I'm going to stop there. When a game just randomly throws out the fact that this girl is pregnant, which in turn causes a domino effect to ensue, which in turn causes Abby to off Joel because for whatever reason they were at the same spot at the right time, it makes the story not believable. It turns players away. This explains why almost half the people that bought this game quit after Joel's death. His death didn't make sense given the circumstances that were established before, though the story that continues afterward makes up for this just a tad bit. I can't help but feel empathy towards those people. They missed out on a redemption of Abby, all because of horribly written introduction of the said character. So the TLDR of this, Abby's introduction sucked and they should have gone a different direction with it. But spoiler alert, it doesn't really get better, only slightly, so. As we go further in the level, this is when we get introduced to real combat and stealth. So structuring this differently than the previous videos, I'm just going to talk about combat now. Combat's almost identical to the previous game. You have different weapons that you can use for different scenarios: the revolver, pistol, long rifle, shotgun, bow, and so forth. Each of them is upgradable depending on your playstyle. Some upgrades are more important than others. For me at least, I focus on weapon recoil because I suck at FPSs on console. The added element that is different to the previous game would have to be going prone, and also kind of the overhauled workbench animations, which I'm not going to talk about that. Prone is probably the most important thing. Prone is something that I found extremely helpful and helped keep the game grounded. Hiding under cars, desks, and other things, it adds more suspense and overall joy to the game. The pill system is back in the game with an overhauled progression. Different lanes of abilities is added every time you pick up an instruction manual in the world. This adds a different element of exploration. The more you explore, the more rewards you will gain in the long run. In these trees, the main columns are survival, crafting, stealth, precision, field tactics, close quarters, covert ops, and firearms, with those skill trees being different for which character you play as, Abby or Ellie, all self-explanatory. I love the number of skills available. This causes the player to not feel overpowered during the game. You have to pick and choose which branch is more tailored to your playstyle. If you like running and gunning, go the firearms and momentum route. If you like stealth, go the covert ops or stealth route. You will almost never find yourself upgrading everything unless you do a new game plus run, or if you quite literally explore every nook and cranny. Speaking of stealth, it is almost the exact same as part 1, which is a good thing. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. The things they added to stealth, such as going prone, only improves the mechanic. I guess the only thing I don't like about the couple added features would have to be dogs, but we will get to that when it comes. Stealth around infected is pretty much the same, stay quiet, and when clickers come around, be even quieter. Stealth around survivors is also the same, stay out of their cone vision and be quiet, lights off. Like, it's pretty much the same as the last. But even though the stealth isn't broken and they did the right thing by not fixing it, I can't help but notice that traditional combat is a more viable option than it was in the last game. For whatever reason, I found myself getting in a lot more firefights and succeeding than I was stealthing and going forward. I don't want to say that this fundamentally breaks stealth, because it doesn't, but it does take away the suspense and horror factor of the game. If you can take down a horde of infected efficiently and still have the crafting components and ammo necessary to keep going, something needs to be fixed. Keep in mind that I played this game on normal, like I do every analysis I do. The game either needed to give me less supplies or the difficulty needed to be readjusted. Sure, I could of course adjust the difficulty slider whenever I see fit, but that just takes away from the immersion. A well-balanced game is when you choose a difficulty and feel that it's fair, so you don't have to adjust it mid-game. When you do have to adjust it mid-game, it means that your game isn't well-balanced, at least in my opinion. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Overall, I think the game did well in some aspects of combat and stealth and poorly in others. Going guns blazing should feel risky rather than preferred route. Difficulty in this game should have been well-balanced rather than just adding a difficulty slider to fix the problem. Regardless, I still think that combat and stealth is overall fun, but when these problems are blatant, I feel obligated to voice that. Regardless, we get to a point where another transition takes place, playing as Ellie. At this point, when I was first playing the game when it came out, I understood that this game is most likely going to do this countless times, and I will get to that at a certain moment in the video. Playing as Ellie again, we loot certain areas, get to a checkpoint, and sign in stating that the two were there and everything is all in the clear. Do some more horseback riding and eventually clear out an infected building that leads to our introduction to spores. In this game, at least in the beginning, you can see that Ellie is is wearing a mask even though she's immune. This is because she's hiding her immunity from Dina, taking Joel's advice even after they had a falling out. All I'm going to say is this makes sense. This section is also an introduction to clickers, and I love clickers. I even have a Funko Pop of one, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. They're so creepy and ugly looking, and with the graphics that this game has, geez, I will say that during this section a lot of small talk happens. Actually, it happens constantly throughout the narrative, same as the last game. I'm not going to comment on this a whole lot in the video, specifically because it's, well, small talk. I'll only bring something up if it is important. But also keep in mind, this is off the script after I played throughout the game and wrote everything. This game has less of those moments than the previous, which is kind of a letdown. You guys will see my frustration later on. After this combat section, a blizzard happens. This causes Ellie and Dina to get cooped up inside an old bookstore, a place where Dina and this dude named Eugene used to hang. Here you can find a lot of backstory behind this Eugene character. He used to be a firefly, he had a family, and he's a huge pothead. This man even has a pot farm in the basement of his bookstore. How in the hell did he have the time to take care of it all? I swear, pot must be at least some kind of currency in this state of the world. Like, people would kill for that shit. Like, just relax, take a puff, and forget about the outside world. I like how this game adds some kind of humanity. People, even in this state of the world, will still do stuff like this, guaranteed. Given that Ellie and Dina are young adults, they're going to do this type of shit, which ultimately they do, and they bang afterwards. When I first played this game, I thought this stuff seemed out of place, but on my other playthroughs, I've grown to accept it. Not the sex, I meant the pod. Talking about the intimate scene though, this thing felt so high school. Yeah, it makes sense because of their age, but damn, being an adult and witnessing this makes me cringe. That I'm talking about rating their kiss and shit was It isn't something that irritates me per se, it just felt awkward, maybe because in the base game they never did stuff like this, so in the sequel, when it was included, it felt out of place. I'm not sure, this isn't going to affect the rating or anything, but I do want to voice my thoughts. Going back to Abby's POV, we see her struggling to get away from an infected with a scripted sprinting segment. This causes her to coincidentally run into Joel and Tommy since they were on patrol, and for whatever reason, they were in the same place as Abby. Yikes, that's all I'm gonna say. So as Abby, you help Joel and Tommy fend off infected, eventually get out of the building, and go towards the cabin that houses Abby's friends. Why does Tommy and Joel just immediately trust this girl? Why do they willingly go to her hideout? It just makes zero sense. Joel would have never done this in the previous game, so why does he do it now? He has grown soft at Tommy's camp. That argument literally falls apart when the world is like the way it is. You trust no one you don't know. You have to be on your guard at all times. You can't afford to trust someone willy-nilly. This whole thing is so fucked from the ground up that I'm actually angry that the writers thought this was a good idea to go down. When Joel and Tommy finally get to the cabin and introduce themselves, everyone in that room starts to stare and it's dead silent. You could probably hear a pin needle if it dropped. And of course, you know what happens. I would let the scene play, but the stuff is so graphic, I don't think the YouTube gods would like it. Abby puts an enormous hole in Joel's leg, the others beat Tommy unconscious, and they restrain Joel and torture him with Abby almost looking like she's having fun while doing so. This scene's so gruesome and I felt overcome with like rage watching it. It isn't necessarily because I thought Joel didn't deserve it, quite the opposite. I knew he deserved it, and that's why I was mad and conflicted, which is what the writers intended. Joel did some horrible things to people and he got what was coming to him, but the thing that soured it all was what I stated before. This is all based on a domino effect of coincidences. It sucks hardcore. I, as a player, felt robbed. Joel dying was inevitable, but because of the piss poor sequences that led to this moment, Joel's death didn't feel right. It wasn't paced properly, it wasn't written properly, hell, I don't think it was even thought out properly. It honestly felt like a cheap way to shove Abby into the plot, so there are transitions of character POVs. Having a game where we only play as Ellie would have been totally fine. I don't get why they felt the need to put this other character in. Was it a way to mimic the previous game with transitions between Joel and Ellie? If that's the case, wow. Bottom line, I really don't know how I feel about this, even to this day. Playing the game more than once, and I think others feel the same. When we play as Ellie after a good sesh, Jesse comes into the room unexpectedly and tells Dina and Ellie that Joel and Tommy haven't come back from their patrols. This causes the three to take different routes to try and find them. After running around for a while, Ellie opens the door to the basement and witnesses Joel's last breath. Abby's friends see Ellie and take her down quickly after Ellie puts up a fight. While Ellie is screaming in a blind rage, like how players feel, we see Joel get offed in front of us. It's very tragic and quite gross. We see some arguing happening in the group, but ultimately someone kicks Ellie unconscious. And when Ellie gets woken up by Dina Dina says that she's sorry. This whole sequence of events was just so all over the place, in all honesty, some good and some bad. The emotion in the scenes is top notch. The emotions that the player feels is at an all-time high, but the sequence of events that lead to this moment are horrible. The coincidence of Abby finding Joel at the right place at the right time is off-putting. The whole pregnant plotline was weird as hell and plays into the coincidences. The fact after 4 years, Abby's group somehow knows where Joel is, it's a writing fiasco. And to kind of make matters worse, Tommy's still alive. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad that this guy's here still with us, but he just took an absolute beating to the face. He should be more fucked up than what he is. It feels so foolish that everyone is still alive after this event. If Abby's group was smart, they would have ended everyone there and left, leaving no one to follow them. And I understand that the writers are self-aware. Later on, Dina comments on this saying that it was weird that they kept Tommy and Ellie alive, but just because they're self-aware doesn't mean it makes things a-okay. This group of people throughout the game murder people in cold blood, deserving or not. So for the writers to portray them as high and mighty, only taking out those deserving, such as Joel, is absolute bullshit. There's no reason for Ellie and Tommy to be alive. It's literally unbelievable. But regardless, Ellie and Tommy talk about what the next steps are to track these guys down. Tommy being reserved while Ellie is determined to chase after them. This causes Tommy to ask Ellie for one day to get some men ready and talk to Maria. It is mentioned that these guys reside in Seattle. They're known as the WLF, an organized militia, so this feat of tracking down Abby won't be easy. Shortly after, a transition happens where Ellie visits Joel's grave, saying her last goodbye. When this scene hit, when the game first came out, I just broke. I actually cried. Having this character that we spent so much time within the previous game just dies like that takes a toll on you. Even if this is a video game, it even hits harder when you realize that his death shouldn't have gone the way it did. Anyways, playing as Ellie, we take a stroll through Joel's home, seeing pictures of him and Ellie, coffee cups everywhere, seeing his clothes that were worn in part 1. This is an emotional time for the player and Ellie, and I love it. Though I have certain feelings towards Joel's death, at least the game gave us enough time to grieve. It lets you ponder on what just happened and lets you collect yourself. This is kind of similar to what happened after Sarah's death, where they play the opening credits, letting the character breathe. Eventually, Ellie opens up a box that holds Joel's watch and gun. Ellie takes them both and heads downstairs where Maria and Dina are waiting for us. Apparently, Tommy left without us in a hurry and told Maria to not let us go to Seattle. But knowing Ellie, Maria lets Ellie go on a single horse and lets Dina go with us. She gives us some supplies and tells us to go get her husband. With the introduction of day 1 in Seattle playing as Ellie, we get onto the highway. There's some brief conversations between Ellie and Dina talking about who the WLF are. Dina throws out factions from the last game, such as the cannibals they met during winter, or the bandits that Joel used to run with. Both are wrong, but Ellie doesn't know this, so she responds by saying she has no idea, and there really isn't a reason to be asking these questions. Joel used to run with a lot of people, too many to count. I love this sort of recollection of past events here, not only to help the player keep up to speed, but it also has the player questioning just like Dina is. Well, after playing the game countless times, it is quite obvious which group who would do such a thing, but after navigating through the PNW forest and following the highway, the duo get to a checkpoint gate that is massive in size. This causes Ellie to climb it, make her way down, turn on a generator, and finally open the door. The puzzles in this game are a huge step forward from the previous. Though those puzzles are still in the game, at least about 80% are more well thought out. Instead of just finding random things around the world to use in order to make it to your next objective, this game has that, but more so it is a multi-step process rather than just doing one thing, which I like. I'm not gonna lie, some can be frustrating, but most of the time I enjoyed myself. Oh, by the way, Ellie almost fucking dies while trying to climb this wall. Well, I did die, but let's just not talk about that. One tiny thing I do want to mention, around the world you can collect these trading cards that have to do with superheroes and villains. I found these collectibles fascinating for whatever reason, which I guess is a plus. We also found a paper that shows the codes in order to open certain gates as well, and to be honest, you find a lot of notes in this game that shows relevant information regarding the plot. I do want to say that this stuff is kind of a cheap way to navigate the player, but at the same time, in this apocalyptic world, how are people going to remember important shit? They don't have a notes app in their phones because they don't have phones. So a logical thing would be to write it down, boomer style. So because of that, it is believable. But with that, we find a note that tells us where we can find our next clue. A place called Saravina Base. It is pretty much a hotel, but we'll get to that soon because we need to find gas in order to power a generator in order to progress onward to that said base. This causes an open worldish section of the game, which I found awesome. Within this section, there's bountiful loot to be found. You can go into the bank and witness a robbery gone wrong on Outbreak Day. In this bank, you can get a shotgun. You can go into a courthouse, take out some infected, get some loot, and small talk happens where Dina states it would be cool to be on jury duty. Now, I've never been on jury duty, but I've heard from people that sucks. So seeing these characters actively want to be a part of it's pretty funny. Also, Ellie just becomes unhinged.
Just give me 5 minutes and my knife. I'd tell you if they were lying or not.
Oh, wow. Okay.
You can visit a synagogue where you can find out more about Dina's background. She came from a lineage of survivors from certain historical moments. I don't think I can say the word because YouTube's been harsh pretty recently, so I'll just let the dialogue play and you will come to that conclusion.
This place brings back a lot of memories. My sister used to drag me to a synagogue all the time.
You never struck me as much of a believer.
Nah, but I like coming from a long line of survivors.
You mean after Outbreak Day?
That, and the Inquisition, and the Holocaust. My family always made it out alive. Barely.
But here is where you can get some gas. Gas in a synagogue, I guess. You can even visit a music shop that houses a bunch of old records. There's also a heartfelt cutscene that you can easily miss. Ellie plays the song Take On Me in front of Dina, and when the song played, I was in awe. The emotion behind this, the importance of the song, it can't be underestimated. It's essentially a preview of what's to come in the game. A confrontation with her own self, as well as the people that she's after. She's struggling with the death of Joel and the effects from that, while simultaneously taking on the WLF and possibly making that mental battle with herself worse. In this case, at the end of the game. There's bountiful places to explore here, but for the sake of the length of the video, let's move on. Ellie and Dina finally get to the hotel that was supposedly a base for the WLF. After taking out some infected that were straight up eating a dead body, yuck, we make our way upstairs where we can find bodies that have been clearly shot. Ellie and Dina both comment on this, saying that it is something to worry about, but the two get to a room that shows an ugly interrogation. Tommy used the same trick that Joel did when he confronted David's men in the winter section of part 1, where he, Joel, would ask one person where a certain something is without verbally saying it. If it matched what the other person said, there was no lie, but if it didn't match, then some shit would go down, which is exactly what happened here. This game doesn't shy away from the horrors that happen in this kind of world. People do some fucked up things in the name of revenge, love, and so forth. But Ellie states that one of these dudes was there the night of the incidents, so that is one person crossed off the list. In looting these bodies, we find another gate code that can lead us to another destination. So to summarize super quickly, because I just rammed straight through this sequence, this section of the game is wide open for you to explore. A new thing that's introduced to part 2, and I adore it. I wish more levels in this game use this kind of a navigation. It adds a new layer of exploration that is desperately needed. Don't get me wrong, I love my linear level design in games, but adding something like this doesn't take that away. It's still linear in nature, but the openness is something that I need to applaud the writers for, and developers. Searching areas for supplies while also implementing these little short stories written down on a piece of paper is not only engaging, but it makes post-apocalyptic Seattle worth looking around. It feels lived in, it feels like some bad shit went down. As the duo push on, we try to make it to the next gate, but when trying to get there, the two get ambushed, which causes me to panic pause out of me being scared.
Something. Oh my god.
What?
After being out of it, Ellie comes to be all tied up and captured. The dude that Ellie cut her with a knife at the beginning of the game wakes her up. This dude starts to interrogate Ellie, asking stuff like how many people came with her, how did they find them, and so forth. So at this point, the WLF know that certain people are out to get them. A dude then comes strolling in, asking the dude with the scar what exactly is he doing, and he tells him that we were there when Joel died. To keep this short and sweet, the two men start arguing about whether to keep Ellie alive or not. Considering Ellie may not be alone, the dude with the scar doesn't want to off us just yet. He wants to know the details, which in fact is smart, while the other dude states that some dude named Isaac wants Ellie dead and for it to be over with. But amidst the arguing, Dina takes out someone, but at the same time, the glass gets shot out from under her and she falls. This causes the dude with the scar to start strangling her. Through some QTEs, Ellie breaks free from being tied up and takes out the dude fast. This eliminates another dude from the list of people that were in Jackson. That makes 2 within the last couple of hours. And I will say this game can get mentally draining fast. This isn't a game where you can sit hours on end playing. You need some breaks here and there. So after this moment, I really needed to sit for a second, ponder on what had just happened, then push forward. So after that much needed break, we get to a shooting gallery stealth section that we are all too familiar with from the previous game, and I believe this is the first one of the game. With this though, since running and gunning is so much easier, I decided to go that route, took down a bunch of enemies, and then pushed forward. Later though, we get to a cutscene that details Dina and Ellie's next move. After looting including a picture and a note off of the Scar dude, Dina takes a look at it. The picture is a nude that was taken from a Polaroid and given to the guy. Using common sense, it must be the guy's girlfriend or something. I don't know. Dina reads the note and it states that this woman was from the TV station, and this woman was also at the lodge when Joel was, well, you know. This gives us another lead and another person to take down, which seems legit. I will say that this has been feeling way too easy, and the pacing has been odd when it comes to taking out these individuals. I wish there was more space with it, though it would have made the game just a tad bit longer. I don't think I would have minded it. Though having a section in the game where you play as Abby for a solid minute, I do sometimes think about what this game would have been like if you only played as Ellie. Maybe better. If they did this, it would have been evenly spread, taking out these people. You wouldn't have to cram it into the first half of the game, but whatever. We still need to play through the whole game to see if that would have been the case. As the duo move forward, it is another open-ended exploration section that I love dearly. Exploring every rundown house, gas station, and store is very immersive, especially when you read the notes left behind in depth and understand what had happened that caused these houses to be abandoned. But with that, you also get your fair share of jump scares. So during this part, I also want to come back to the place where Dina mentions and asks why the WLF didn't take Ellie out when they had the chance. You get this interaction with optional dialogue. Same as the last game, pressing triangle at the right time will trigger conversations that are well worth the button press. You get more information out of a character's thoughts, motivations, likes and dislikes, and so forth. I love how they brought this back. It was one of my favorite features from part 1, and I thought it was the Last of Us defining feature. But regardless, after Dina finishes talking about it, Ellie simply says they fucked up. Like, okay, this isn't a great explanation for why they let Ellie live. I feel like it was the writers that were the ones that fucked up and couldn't come up with any better explanation. Sure, when you play as Abby, you get to realize that the WLF are mostly decent people, kinda, that are in a shitty world. They aren't exactly saints, but they don't go around killing innocent people. But that argument connecting to why they let Ellie live falls apart when Ellie literally tracks them down all the way to Seattle to take them out. Abby's group should have known better, and it isn't believable. You're in a goddamn apocalypse where people kill each other without hesitation. You are literally trying to survive, jeopardizing that by just explaining, hey, they didn't do anything wrong, so we aren't going to kill them, fundamentally tears down the world that Naughty Dog was trying to build. There is no good and bad in this world anymore. The world is very gray. You can't afford to be a good person. So, reiterating myself, this shit isn't believable. Now I'm going to stop because I'm actually getting heated writing this. Going forward, we have to navigate our way through a trap-ridden street, which, well, is harder than you think. These things are genuinely hard to see, and I love it. You have to constantly look intently and make sure that you aren't going to trip over the wire. And after you get through this, you see a person's creative drawings. Same, man. Same. Then we get to see a certain mural for an important figure in an enemy faction's religion. The mural is a painting of a normal looking woman with words, "Feel her love." Don't worry, you'll find out why this certain faction worships this figure soon. Well, they don't detail it well, but it is enough to satisfy the curiosity. Ellie and Dina then comes across a horse that has been ripped open. This horse also has Tommy's brand, which means that Tommy has been through this area and it seems fresh. And as the camera pans, we get to see Dina throwing up and comes up with the excuse of the smell. Well, this chick is Prego, which I'll go into detail later when it is revealed, and let me tell you, I hate this plot point. So, after following the trail of bodies and making our way to the TV station, we see a messed up scenario. WLF members are strung up on nooses, dead. Yeah, this is the type of shit that makes The Last of Us The Last of Us. This shit is brutal, and it is clear that there's another faction that is lurking in Seattle that seems sadistic in nature, almost cult-like. Seeing horror like this, not coming from the infected, adds a whole another layer of survival horror to this game. It makes it so you want to get the necessary information and get the absolute fuck out of Dodge. You don't want to stick around and find out who did this. So after finding more bodies, probably caused by the faction that hung the others, we come across the girl that was in the picture and that was at the lodge in Jackson. She was taken out by that certain faction. Though Ellie then loots her duffel bag and finds literally every picture of every single person that was at the lodge. And this is a coincidence. Yes, you could make the argument that, hey, maybe she wanted to keep them so she can remember her friends, but that falls apart when the convenience of Ellie casually finding them happens. This literally gives her every single person that she intends to take out. It would have been better for Ellie to interrogate the certain people to figure out where the next target is and what their name is, just like Tommy did. But going the route of just randomly finding pictures of them and learning their names is so lazy and dumb. It feels like a freshman in college film school wrote this script. I should know, I've been one of these people. I also just want to say briefly, I've been in film school for 5 years, specializing in script writing as well as film criticism. I also minored in creative writing, so I'm pretty sure I know what I'm talking about when it comes to this stuff. I'm not trying to flex my credentials, I'm just letting you guys know that I'm somewhat qualified in what I'm talking about. So to summarize this scene, this is quite literal garbage. Regardless, after moving onward, some WLF members come into the scene and witness the horrors that the other faction caused. They are horrified. Also, going off of this, if you take out an enemy and another one sees their bodies, they will actually comment on it, whether that be emotion of sadness, anger, or horror. It's cool to see the reaction that the enemies have. It's a nice detail that was added, and after straight trash in this game for a couple minutes, I feel the need to at least commend this game in some aspect. But after fighting these enemies, Ellie and Dina run away and find themselves near a subway filled with infected. And let me tell you, the atmosphere of this section is so damn incredible. The red hue of the subway, the infected mixed with the WLF, and the deafening clicks of clickers, this section is just so damn immersive. Not to mention, once you go deeper into the level, you get introduced to a new enemy, the Shambler. This infected is built like a bloater, but instead of just being a tank, this thing, when it gets near you, it will blow spores at you, dealing loads of damage. It is wise to stealth around these guys, but well, I didn't do that and wasted all my ammo. And to be honest, a lot of the subway section is mostly just stealthing and combat. This isn't a bad thing by any means, there just isn't a lot said during this for obvious reasons. But after trying to get topside, we ran across a subway crash with trains stacked on top of each other. This causes us to navigate with caution, but because my brain is trained to come up with bad scenarios all the time, I had a strong feeling that we would fall, someone gets stuck, which is exactly what happens. Ellie gets tackled by an infected, and a QTE plays until Dina saves us. But while Ellie was falling, her mask broke, and since Dina didn't believe Ellie's story about being immune, Dina freaks out and tries to take off her own mask to save Ellie, which of course Ellie forces Dina to calm down. Ellie tries to tell her that she wasn't kidding when she said that she was immune. I like to think that this is a huge story moment regarding trust between the two, but after, it really isn't mentioned much besides, like, for an instance, but I'm gonna move on. So after the whole fiasco, infected start to go crazy because a lot of sound was made. This causes a pretty good ass chase sequence where you actually feel like you're about to die. There was even a couple of times where you get a scripted tackle scene. Though it is small, I like the addition because of the immersion and horror. But soon we get to an abandoned theater and we have a rest finally. And I'm going to let the scene play and comment on it afterwards.
You want to tell me what's going on with you?
What's going on with me? Ellie, I just saw you breathe spores.
I told you. I'm immune.
Okay, you're immune? Come on.
I was bitten a long time ago.
The fuck are you talking about?
I was bitten and nothing happened.
The chemical burn.
Maria and Tommy and Joel are the only ones who know. Knew. Now you know. I can't get you infected if that's what you're worried about. I can't make you immune either. Can you say something?
Really? I think I'm pregnant.
What?
Don't worry, it's not yours.
What are we supposed to do now?
I just need to rest for a second.
Are you fucking kidding? How long have you known?
I was late a few weeks ago.
A few weeks? We could have still turned back.
I didn't know. I wasn't sure, okay? I didn't want to be a burden.
Well, you're a burden now, aren't you? I'm gonna make sure this place is secured. You just rest.
Well, that was pretty heavy to say the least. So Dina finally knows that Ellie's immune, but as you can see, nothing is really said on it. It felt like something shoved in here, you know? I would have thought that Dina would have had a different reaction to this. Either excitement, worry, or asking the backstory behind it more in depth. But there isn't any of that. Instead, they shift the focus on Dina's pregnancy, and the sole reason that this plot point is set in place is to mimic Mel's. This is literally it. That's the only depth to it. Later down the line, things get heavy with the plot point in mind, but as things stand now, I just don't like it. I will say though that the acting was phenomenal. You can clearly see the emotions conveyed, especially when Dina just looks at Ellie when she said that she was a burden, like the what the fuck look. It was perfect, but enough about that scene, let's move forward. During your time in the theater, you just explore essentially. You walk around, find out the entrance of the stage is locked, so you go up the stairs and see a radio. We go through the window to turn on the power and witness some dead dude that got fried. We get back into the room and turn on the radio, but Ellie doesn't know how to tune it. She bangs on the radio and some keys are underneath it, which unlocks the stage room. So when you explore just a tad bit more, we find a guitar and Ellie decides to practice a little bit. We transition to 3 years earlier, where it's Ellie's birthday and Joel took her out for an adventure. I love these flashbacks so damn much. It feels so much like the original Last of Us. It felt more lighthearted, the banter between the two was great, and just the atmosphere felt good. Don't get me wrong, I like the atmosphere of this game, but sometimes it's just too much, you know? This game is very depressing with little to no comedic relief. So seeing these flashbacks feel good pacing wise. This flashback consists mostly of experiencing the relationship between Joel and Ellie once again. You see the two teasing each other by pushing each other into the water. You see Ellie constantly bugging Joel about what exactly he's going to show her. This lightening of the mood couldn't have come at a better time. The two eventually get to a museum full of dinosaurs and space shit, both of Ellie's favorite things. You get to see different types of dinos while also throwing a hat on top of their head. And eventually we get to see the space section where we see the pilot seat of a rocket ship. This is a beautiful scene where, after hours of seeing Ellie unhappy with Joel's death, we see a happy moment of them together again.
Whoa.
After you. Watch your head.
Whoa. What the heck?
Oh! Okay. Wow.
Wow.
As you look at all these buttons.
Oh, it's so badass. Man. Could you imagine just...
Happy birthday, kiddo.
What is this?
This is a thing that took a mighty effort to find. Take it. Close your eyes. It'll be worth it.
Okay.
Seconds and counting. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 25 seconds. 20 seconds and counting. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 5,
Do okay.
Are you fucking kidding me?
You're welcome, kiddo. What do you say we keep looking around, huh?
Yeah, I guess.
Hey. Welcome to Earth.
You could see genuine happiness here. It's something to lighten the mood with, as well as help the player remember what it was like to be with Joel. Though it does make me handle Joel's death a bit worse, it does succeed at making his death more impactful. You quite literally miss the dude being next to you. Also showing him being an amazing dad just puts the icing on the cake. I think while this scene played, I said, fucking damn it, dude, for the reasons I just stated. It just sucks to realize this dude is no longer here, and the only time you're going to see him in these cute flashbacks. And even then, I think he has like maybe less than 7 minutes of screen time. So I guess the TLDR is this scene's awesome, but it makes me hate the plot point of Joel's death more, which I honestly think is what the writers intended. But since Ellie is a curious little shit, she wants to explore the part of the museum that Joel hasn't yet. So she swims over to that specific side with Joel following her, with him giving her a boost in order to get inside. When Ellie gets inside, she sees a series of writings on the wall. These include, "I killed for them," "The 4 soldiers at the gate, the last one cried," "The woman tortured, choked on her own blood," "The stragglers who snuck into the camp, they just wanted food," "The kid who ran into the blast, I couldn't stop him," and "The people in the van, we locked them in and doused it with gas." Using common sense, you start to realize that this dude feels guilty for everything his group has done, and honestly, it is kinda creepy. Finally, we get to a couple other writings. "There's no light," and "Liars," with a firefly above the last statement. After getting absolutely scared shitless by a boar, we see a dead body with a note on him. This note details what it was like to be a firefly, saying that every time there was a sacrifice, their leader said it was worth it. We also get to find out that after the incident at the hospital, the fireflies disbanded. They're no more, mostly for the fact that their work ended up not being worth it. Too much was sacrificed, and judging by the notes on the wall, they weren't exactly good people either, which is why this person says that there isn't any light. This brings a different type of angle to the group. Through this last game, we were never given any reason to think that these guys were bad. They wanted to use Ellie to find a cure, a noble cause, right? But seeing this brings a darker nature to it. They kill innocent people who wanted food, they straight up lit people on fire, and through all of it, their leader said that it was all part of the plan. This whole thing is so fucked and I love it. And when Ellie sees this and Joel comes in and witnesses this too, it kind of plays into Joel's lie at the end. Ellie starts to kind of believe him more, I should say. At least that's how I look at it. This adds more depth to the game and the relationship that Ellie has with the lie that was told to her. But this is when Ellie wakes up from the flashback and we take some time to practice some guitar. Yeah, I still haven't gotten any better. We also meet Dina upstairs where she has morning sickness, and she doesn't look to be doing too good. As we talk to her, she gives us some important information. Through the radio that was fixed, we find out that Owen, the dude that got Mel pregnant, went to AWOL for whatever reason, but they still haven't got any information about Abby. But after a cute little scene happens with some emotional music in the background, Ellie essentially says that she's sorry, that her getting angry was kind of stupid. The plot point is stupid, but same difference, I guess. But the intimate conversation gets interrupted when someone mentions on the radio that a lone wanderer has been spotted, which means that's probably Tommy. This causes us to get all suited up and find him, of course, without Dina's help because, well, yeah. We eventually got to Hillcrest. In this section, you essentially just get supplies, ammo, whatever it is that you need. Along the way through, you hear gunshots with a group of WLF in a truck start driving towards the sound. This means that Tommy's either in trouble or causing trouble. This causes Ellie to try and make it to him as quickly as possible. Soon after, we get into a combat sequence. This is also the introduction of dogs. Even in stealth, dogs are able to sniff you out by following a scent trail that you leave behind. You can also see your trail in listening mode. My thoughts on this new addition is mostly negative. In my opinion, I think it ruins the fluidity of combat and stealth. For me at least, it's almost a guaranteed non-stealth run with dogs around. I just found myself always getting caught. There are times where you're just low on supplies, low on health, and low on ammo, and when a dog section comes, you feel pretty much screwed out of surviving unless you stealth kill as much as you can. Thank God there isn't much of these sections, but when they do happen, I get pretty irritated. After that's done with, we get to another similar section of just looting and taking out more infected. These bloaters though are something else. At this point, it was my first time wearing headphones while playing this game. The rest, it was just TV speakers. So hearing those dudes in the 3D headphones, wow. But in this section, there's one mechanic that I forgot to mention: safes. You find these safes around the world, but in order to open them, you have to find the combo first. These can be on notes, walls, doors, and so forth. You pretty much just have to explore in order to get these things, but when you do get the combo, the rewards are well worth it. In this section, I got an extra holster, which was much needed. We also later get the bow. In this house, there's a note on the table detailing some gruesome stuff, explaining that, in their eyes, the WLF isn't much better than the military, and a certain individual that wrote the note did something horrible as well. Turns out you find this guy in the garage, and my god was he a bitch to take down. Regardless, you can just jack his bow and go on your way. Going into detail about the bow, I love this thing and always have in The Last of Us. But after some more stealthing, looting, and shooting, we get to see a scene that caused a lot of controversy in the gaming community.
What the hell are you doing here?
I think I'd let you do this on your own.
Jesse,
Where's Dina?
she's safe. She's just sick.
What kind of sick?
She's fine.
Christ, there's a lot of them.
Hey, how hurt are you?
I'll be okay. Your friends out there rushed me. No warning, no nothing.
Tell me you didn't come alone.
Give me shit about it later.
You're a fucking idiot. You know that, right?
Yeah. Right. See that truck?
That's your plan.
We need to get some distance.
Okay.
So if you guys can't tell, this was the exact scene that played out in a trailer. I forgot which one, but it was the one where it was Joel instead of Jesse. This is blatant promotion for something that isn't in the game. While admittedly, it doesn't change much when it comes to the story in my eyes, considering we've already gotten past the point of Joel's death, I still think misleading your fan base isn't something that you should do. I also think that specific Joel trailer had people excited, and when his death happened, they got even more mad because it seemed like they were promised Joel in the trailer. I agree with this side, it isn't something that you should do, but we are 2 years years after the release. I got past my anger of this a while ago, so seeing this again doesn't bug me too much. But the plan now is to take out the remaining WLF, jack their car, and get some mileage between us and them. But when the two do get into the car, the WLF come chasing after us, initiating a set piece with driving and shooting, as well as at the end the infected coming after us. Jesse and Ellie drive the car into the water, get out, and make their way to the theater. I found this whole thing to be technical marvel with that much going on at once. WLF, infected, driving the car, it must have been difficult to pull this off. It is also effective at getting the player truly immersed. I say that a lot in this video, but it's true. I was genuinely dodging and weaving when I was taking out the infected. It was sick. When Ellie and Jesse get back to the theater, some odd ass shit plays out where Dina's excited and worried to see Jesse with Ellie. And with this, it seems like Dina is more interested in Jesse and seeing if he's okay rather than Ellie. This is quite a pickle to be in, and I feel for Ellie at this moment. You're caring for this chick, do whatever you can to make her happy and feel better, but when you get back, she barely greets you. It's fucked up in its own kind of way. I found this effective when it comes to making me feel more connected with Ellie, but afterwards there was another flashback with Tommy and Joel. During this, we target practice with Tommy and just have some bonding time, but it is very clear that something is on Ellie's mind. One can imagine that it's about what had happened with the Fireflies. Eventually we meet with Joel. He tells Ellie that at some point she needs to replace the strings on her guitar, so Tommy and Joel come up with a plan to go to the nearest instrument store and get some strings if they have any. But Ellie seems uncomfortable with this idea. The question in my head is, at this point, does she know that he lied, or at least has her doubts? This is the first time we see Ellie and Joel be on opposite footing of one another. As we make our way to the store, we find out that the way to cross is blocked. We must go through a hotel instead. This causes Joel and Ellie to explore it, but eventually they get to a spot where spores are visible. This has Joel tell Ellie to put her mask on, but she disagrees and states that no one's around. Why does she need to put it on? But Joel replies by saying that you never know who you may run into. This dialogue shows the standoffish nature between the two, and it's unclear about what exactly it is. It very much seems like something happened before this, and sadly I don't think it's shown in the game, but the fact that Ellie is standoffish is something to keep in the back of your mind. When the two push forward, we fight some infected, loot a little bit, but eventually I get scared shitless because a bloater busts through the wall and grabs Ellie. I tried so hard to take this thing down, it took about 7 minutes. Then I finally got taken down and realized that this is a scripted sequence where the bloater's supposed to get his hands on Ellie. Pause. I wish they would have just scripted this entire sequence instead with no gameplay. I wasted 7 minutes doing nothing essentially. I was about to reload and save because I thought something was bugged. Thank God I didn't, or else I would have to do it again. I don't know, it just pissed me off. After that odd sequence ends, Ellie finds a body on the floor and Joel takes out a clicker on the floor as well. Come to find out, these two were the kids that fled Jackson. Apparently they wanted to help society instead of being cooped up inside Jackson, but about an hour into their adventure they ran into a horde and got bit. They didn't want to turn, so they decided to end themselves, but the boyfriend was too much of a coward. He shoots the girl and lets himself turn. This whole story is pretty messed up, and it shows that there's no hero in this. There is no helping anything like they were planning to do. All that it will do is get yourself killed. In realizing this, Ellie says only if they were immune. This causes an argument of sorts to break out between Joel and Ellie. Ellie once again questions the lie that was told to her, asking that she hasn't met anyone else that was immune. In all honesty, this was kind of a dumb question on her part, which Joel gives a good explanation of. If someone else was immune, they're not going to tell you, for the same reason that Ellie isn't telling anyone. It's too dangerous. But also, when I was thinking, there are so many people in the world still. If there are some that are immune, they are probably across the country. I just think she asked the wrong question here. It was a question that can be easily answered. Joel pretty much tells Ellie that there was no cure and there's no use in questioning it. So Ellie reluctantly agrees to get out of the hotel with Joel, which causes the flashback to end. I love this flashback in its entirety, even though some dumb questions were asked. Some simple combat and stealth, the deep conversation with Joel, and witnessing the thoughts race through Ellie's mind. All of it was the shit I needed, especially since we've yet to get our answers from the previous game. This is one step closer to finding out what exactly happened between Joel and Ellie. We then find Ellie stitching herself up, but Dina comes into the room and takes over, saying that Jesse's alright. There is some awkward silence here. The player and Ellie can clearly see that Dina still has feelings for the man. Understanding this, Ellie says that Jesse's a good guy. But the conversation gets interesting when Dina mentions that one of Abby's friends has been spotted at the hospital, and she learned this from the radio. That causes us to go on our way alone and try to find her. As we're exploring the rest of Seattle without Dina, you will come across some areas infested with infected that hide some pretty good loot, and you'll have your traditional spooky encounters. Though this is the first time you get introduced to the stalkers in part 2, stalkers in this game are absolutely terrifying for a completely different reason. Even when you engage listening mode, you still can't see them, which makes stealth a whole other monster. Having enemies stealth against you as well adds a different difficulty layer, as well as it makes things interesting. But with that, there's also some QTEs, where a stalker bum rushes you like an NFL linebacker. You get tackled through some glass and into the water, effectively getting you closer to the hospital as well as getting you stinky and dirty from being in sewer water. And when we do get topside, we get introduced to the faction that has been teased throughout our entire time in Seattle, the Scars. These guys mostly use melee weapons and bows to take down their enemies. As I said before, they are almost cult-like, not using anything that was used in the old world, well, besides like pistols and guns. They also use stealth constantly, which sucks for me because I like running and gunning. The introduction of this faction with the build-up behind it was excellently executed. They're actually scary to go up against. You can't use the same strategy on them as you do with Infected or the WLF. You're almost forced to stay stealthy, whereas with Infected and WLF, you can go either way. Though, with hindsight, I do wish that we battle the Scars just a tad bit more as Ellie. You mostly go against the Scars when you play as Abby, which kind of sucks. I like the idea of Ellie going up against an enemy she has no idea about, rather than Abby knowing everything about this enemy. Hopefully I got my point across. Regardless, you still take out more Scars, some in the parking garage where I totally botched stealth, and once again right after the fact. I believe they did this back to back just to get you accustomed to battling this faction, which I see as a good thing. There's even this part where this huge ass dude comes at us and I just absolutely hit a clip. Well, kind of. I just thought it was cool. Going off of that, I think this gunplay is very well optimized. Everything shoots when I want it to, nothing feels unfair, and I legitimately want to engage in combat, regardless of what faction it is. But Ellie finally makes it towards the hospital. First, we take out this chick playing on the PS Vita, and remember that shit? I'm old. This whole place is infested with WLF, and I took down every single one of them without using stealth. Man, I really suck at this. But once you take out all of them and crawl through the vents and drop down, we finally confront Nora, the girl that was there at the lodge. While talking to her, she's absolutely vile, saying that she remembers Joel's screams and calls him a bitch. You know, that just flipped a switch in me. We go on a goose chase throughout the hospital trying to catch up to Nora since she ran away while getting shot at, but it comes up to a stalemate when she stops at a pit that leads into a spore-ridden part of the hospital. Ellie says fuck it and sends both of them down there. Nora runs away and we're left to take out some infected as well as some wolves. This wasn't too hard in all honesty, you just have to pin them against each other. Finally, we get to Nora.
Hi, Nora. Oh, God.
Where's Abby?
You're breathing spores. You're her.
You Firefly?
There are no fireflies anymore.
Where's Abby?
I'm fucking dead anyway. Why would I tell you anything?
Because I can make it quick. Or I can make it so much worse.
Think about what he did. How many people are dead because of him?
It's your last chance.
I'm not giving up, my friend.
As you can see, Nora recognizes Ellie as the girl that is immune, and she tells us that the Fireflies are no more. And like I said previously, the interesting part about this scene is when Ellie just lets loose. This is literally a visual image of what Ellie is feeling as well as the players. It lets the player let the rage out on the person who had a part in Joel's death. It's fucked up and it affects Ellie, but it is something that must be done. Ellie wouldn't have found out where Abby is without doing what she did. Also, the fact that you have QTEs while interrogating this woman makes this scene 10 times better. That was for Joel, bitch. Ellie then makes it back to the theater all messed up, and it makes sense. Ellie hasn't done something like this before. She isn't desensitized, but it sets up a solid character arc that you will see later. Ellie does some pretty messed up stuff and it gets to her, kind of like PTSD. Well, it's exactly like PTSD. Ellie then goes to wash off with the help of Dina. The scene plays where Ellie admits that she made Nora talk. This is the first time we've seen Ellie open up emotionally, and I thought it was a great timing. This whole time we have been taking out enemies and just trying to find people. There really hasn't been a time where something huge happens. But when it does happen, they do the best they can at conveying that emotion properly, whether that plot point be better or for worse. Ellie says that she doesn't want to lose Dina. She has already lost Joel. She doesn't need to lose another person. And this really hit me. After what she said in part 1, everyone has either died or left me. Everyone except for you. Ellie eventually goes back to another dream flashback. It is her back at the hospital in Salt Lake City, maybe like a year or two before the events of the game. You can look around the hospital, find old notes that detail the immunity that Ellie has, but eventually you get to the room where it all went down. Ellie finds a bag, and inside that bag is a recorder. So this is another coincidence in all honesty, but I'll let it slide because these were all over the place in the previous game. So the recorder has the recording of Abby, I'm pretty sure. She says that she wanted to go after Joel and Ellie, but no, she can't go alone. And even if they by some miracle found another person that's immune, it wouldn't matter because no one else has the ability to reverse engineer that immunity. Joel off the only person who can, damning the entire world. I like how they address the plot point of the Fireflies. For some reason, having the ability to make a cure in part 1, I always had trouble coming to terms with this because it doesn't seem believable. But fixing that plot point here by saying that there was literally only one person that could made me kind of happy. It makes sense in a world like this. It makes sense that he is with the Fireflies and also totally tears apart Joel's argument that he stated before, along with other things. To show the emotion and weight of this realization, I'm going to play the cutscene when Joel has to come clean with the truth.
Tell me what happened here. If you lie to me one more time, I'm gone. You will never see me again. But if you tell me the truth, I'll go back to Jackson. No matter what it is. Just say it. Joel.
Making a vaccine would have killed you. So I stopped them.
Oh my God. Don't you fucking touch me! I'll go back. But we're done.
This sucks, man. Ellie fucking breaks down. In the first game, she had the feeling that her life mattered, but Joel took that feeling away by not letting her fix mankind. Joel decided for her. Although I agree with Joel 100%, even if they did try to reverse engineer a cure, there's no guarantee that it would work. And even then, that shit would be a hot commodity. How would they distribute it? How would they deal with the people trying to be selfish? What about the people that actually don't want the infection to end? A cure would honestly fix nothing in my eyes, but it still doesn't matter because Joel decided for Ellie. Ellie wanted to mean something and Joel took that away. Anyways, Ellie wakes up and tries to find Dina and Jesse. When she does, we see that Dina isn't looking so good. She's pale and has night sweats. Her pregnancy is progressing. So, when Jesse pulls this aside, he asks if she is preggo, and Ellie says yes. At first I was worried that Dina would get mad at Ellie for telling him, but I don't think that's the case. The biggest thing that is said though is that Dina needs to head back to Jackson since she is in no state to be here. But since Ellie is vengeful and wants to find Abby as well as Tommy, she doesn't want to leave quite yet, but Jesse oddly agrees and the two leave Dina to go find Tommy. My biggest question is, wouldn't someone try to check out the theater? I mean, I get the doors locked, but still, there must be other ways in. Also, Tommy must know that Ellie, Dina, and Jesse are in Seattle. Shouldn't he be trying to find them? Why is it us trying to find him? This is a case of this being a video game and I just have to accept it, which kind of sucks if I'm being honest. Don't worry though, this won't affect the score. While exploring with Jesse, there are some interesting optional conversations. For example, they talk about what if the WLF came to Jackson. Ellie says that they won't because for one, the people in Jackson try to legitimately help Abby. It wouldn't look good if that information slipped to Isaac, especially since their actions caused us to come to Seattle. 2, the WLF are kind of just taking out everyone. They're almost at war with the Scars, it seems. I don't think they can afford to spare some people back to Jackson a second time. These conversations aren't important at all, but it does answer some questions that are in the back of your mind, which I appreciate. There is also some optional dialogue where Jesse says that he would have come to Seattle if Ellie had asked. Jesse looked up to Joel, sort of like a role model. I like this character building with Jesse. This stuff's pretty hard to miss, but when you get the dialogue, it's well worth it. There was also some funny dialogue talking about how Joel thought Ellie had a crush on Jesse, but eventually we get to a bridge that overlooks the aquarium that Ellie is trying to get to. They see a boat fly past them, which means that that is their next goal in order to get to Abby. As soon as we get to a spot where we can get a chance at stealing the boat, after sneaking around for some time, a scene plays where Ellie and Jesse debate on if they should go to the marina or to go to Tommy's location. We found out through enemy chatter that there is a sniper somewhere near a bridge, but since Ellie is so hell-bent on getting revenge, she has convinced herself that the best way to save Tommy is to take down Abby. Of course, this doesn't sit well with Jesse, so he goes on his own way. In a certain point of view, she's doing what Joel did when he took her out of that hospital. She's being selfish. She's doing what is best for her rather than doing what is best for those she cares about. I find this point interesting. It shows the rabbit hole she's gone down and there may not be a way to get back out of it. I've seen a lot of people criticize this point in the game though, saying that it isn't in line with Ellie's personality, but I argue that. After witnessing Joel's death, it is going to do some shit to you. Of course, she's going to want revenge. In my book, that overrides her personality. There is a clear motivation here, not to mention, throughout the game you see the clear vengeful nature of hers. This is honestly her new personality, and it's believable. Just because you don't agree with what Ellie is doing doesn't mean that her personality must fit what you think is best. That's the beauty of storytelling. But I will say later on, during the later parts of the story, my opinion changes on this. Regardless, we keep pushing forward, whether that be stealth, taking out WLF, using this world controlling boat, and coming across the WLF and Scars fighting each other. Speaking on that, I always thought this mechanic's cool, where two factions fight each other and take each other out. This was in the last game a lot, same with this game. It's always a treat when you don't have to fight because they have done that already amongst themselves. You also get this pretty dope bloater fight, though you can take it out quite easily if you have the proximity bombs, mollies, and shotgun ammo. Eventually though, we do get to the aquarium. When getting there, we stealth around for a tad bit and look for supplies, but after getting into the vents and falling down because they aren't steady, a dog attacks Ellie and eventually we off it. This part kind of got to me, especially after knowing we kind of get close to this dog from Abby's point of view, but we will get to that eventually. We then get to the part where Ellie confronts Mel and Owen. She tries to do the same scare tactic as Tommy where each person has to point to the location on the map and they have to match up. But Owen, not listening, attacks Ellie but ultimately gets shot. Mel tries to take us out as well, but Ellie overcomes this and offs her as well. With Owen's dying words, he says that Mel was pregnant, and this sends Ellie into a panic attack. Probably because Dina's pregnant too, and it sends her into this panic because what if this was Dina? How would Ellie react? It's an extremely messed up situation and very gray. On one hand, you want to make these people pay, but on the other, you're becoming a monster. You're becoming someone that you don't want to be. At the beginning of the video, I said that I don't like this pregnancy plot point, which I still don't because of the coincidences that go along with it, but this certain plot point does well in conveying the gray nature in this world. Every action someone makes can be evil in a certain point of view. In Ellie's point of view, Abby's group is evil because what they did to Joel. In Abby's point of view, Ellie is evil because what she's done to her friends. Ellie literally offed everyone, along with Tommy, not to mention the shit that Joel did is the icing on the cake. The game does a damn good job at making everything rigid. At this moment, I was thinking, is this all worth it in the end? The trauma that you created for yourself, the end of a potential life, and so forth. I honestly don't like either side of this coin. There is no lesser of two evils here. They're both fucked up in their own way. It's kind of masterful. Ellie then wakes up at the theater. We meet with Tommy and Jesse, who are talking about which is the better way to get out of Seattle. But after some playful banter between Tommy and Jesse about a gold necklace from Maria, Tommy goes to the front of the theater. Now, I do want to let this scene play. I have quite a bit of things to say after this, so bear with me. Also, it's pretty graphic, so fair warning.
Shit. Jesse, stand up. Hands in the air, I shoot this one too.
Don't you do it, Ellie. Get out of here.
Stand up, now.
Don't you fucking dare.
Shut the fuck up. All right, stop, stop. Toss your weapon. Toss your weapon! Fuck.
No.
I know why you killed Joel. He did what he did to save me. There is no cure because of me. I am the one that you want. Just let him go.
You killed my friends. We let you both live. And you wasted it.
So to summarize, Jesse dies. Abby has a gun pointed at Tommy and Ellie, and the scene cuts to black where we play as Abby. I have a hard time deciding whether I like this or I don't. Jesse just gets offed so quickly. We barely had time with him. We honestly barely knew anything about him, and the death was just so sudden to where I just felt shock rather than empathy. On one hand, even though we barely knew Jesse, I thought he was a good character. It's odd. He was an honest dude who would do anything for his friends. He always had Ellie and Dina's back, but on the other, the lack of time with him caused me to also not care about his death. I know I'm being contradictory, but that's the point. I care about him, but I also don't. And because of that, his death made me feel very uncomfortable. I think the right word for this would be neutral. Not a con, but also not a positive. But also because of this, I can clearly see why so many people would be upset by this. Lots of people may have liked him, which in turn caused people to be pissed at his death. The writing felt out of pace and sudden. The TLDR, I don't know how I think about this. The one thing I know I hate though is the start of the second half of the game. Playing as Abby. You literally play as her after Jesse's death. Things would have been so much better if they made us play as Abby right after we took out Owen and Mel. That way, though we still have harsh feelings about Abby, it would have angered players a tad bit less. This sudden change also makes people dislike the pacing. This effectively will make people turn off the game because of Abby being playable. You built up Abby as being this incredibly horrible person. Why would you force people to play as her? I understand that you want people to see her POV, but right after you off Jesse? Really? She already took out Joel. Needless to say, I understand now why people hate this game, but we're still going to push forward and find out if that opinion's going to stick. At the start of playing as Abby, it's mostly just filler. It's a flashback essentially. As Abby, you try to find your father, you save a zebra, which now that I think about it, it's kind of the same as the giraffe scene. And then a conversation plays out where Owen tells Abby's dad that Ellie made it to the hospital. At this point, I knew where things were headed. Abby's dad was the head surgeon when it came to Ellie. Before I get ahead of myself, another scene plays where Marlene is talking to Abby's dad. Marlene's very hesitant, which very much changed my view on the Fireflies. In the first game, I thought they were evil in all honesty. The scene painting it in a different light made me empathetic. You could see Marlene's contemplation. She never wanted to do the surgery, but it was either save humanity, potentially, or be selfish. Same as Joel's decision. Then Marlene asks, what if it was Abby? That single line made me very interested and, dare I say, almost changed my mind about Abby. It's a legitimate question. I mean, look at Joel. He already lost a daughter. No way in hell is he going to lose another one. And with that, there was hesitation with Abby's dad. But Abby then walks in and tells her dad that she would want him to do the surgery. exactly what Ellie wanted Joel to do. Everything is reversed between the two characters. Wherever Ellie goes, Abby goes in the opposite direction. Abby was only at the lodge to take out Joel. In the next scene, it confirms this. Ellie, on the other hand, wanted to take out literally everyone, not just Abby. The dichotomy between the two is well made, even if the pacing is off a lot of the time. But next we see Abby witness the death of her father, mirroring Ellie's reaction to Joel's death. As I said, these two characters are very similar, but go about their revenge in different ways. This transitions to the scene of Joel's death. Abby and Owen only wanted to stop at Joel, not to take out Ellie, while everyone else thought differently. Again, different than what Ellie wanted to do. This brings the question, which character went about it the right way? Ellie's a piece of shit for killing a pregnant woman as well as all of Abby's friends, even when they let her live. But Abby is also a piece of shit. She tailed Joel for 4 years and absolutely tortured him. Even when she had no idea about the backstory between him and Ellie, she knew next to nothing. You start to hate both characters. They aren't good people, but we still have more to see on Abby's side. Wake up as Abby with Manny there with us. The WLF has set up camp at Lumen Field, and if you guys don't know, it's the home of my Seattle Seahawks. When you travel through the stadium, you get to see what the WLF life is like. Huge community, lots of agriculture, classrooms, lunchroom, dog parks, and more. I love how they made this place well lived in with lots of detail. It also shows the WLF maybe aren't that bad. They're just doing what they can to survive. It almost is a replication of Jackson. There's a lot of similarities in this game and it's very intentional. Side note, I like how you can spend how long you want petting a dog and playing fetch. I was here for a solid 5 minutes enjoying myself. From here, nothing crazy happens besides an on-rails combat sequence. Some scars ambush Mel, Manny, and Abby. You're in the back of a car taking out as many as you can until you get into this weird mega store similar to Costco. Here you take out some infected using stealth, and after is another scripted infected combat sequence. I'm going to be honest, the beginning of Abby's POV is quite boring and slow. Lots of people have issues with the pacing of her side. They could have easily cut about like 30% of her story and the game would have been just fine with it. On further playthroughs, it really is a drag. The real interesting story elements come from Abby and Mel trying to mend their relationship back together. It is mostly just the developers and writers trying to get the player interested in the friends that Abby has. Manny's pretty much your typical frat boy who loves to drink and get laid. He also likes anime, which makes him my favorite. Mel's personality really is dependent on Owen. The conversations between her and Abby only talk about him and her pregnancy, and I don't like this. You can't have a character's personality solely dependent on that. There must be something deeper. Dina had more depth to her than just her pregnancy, so there's no excuse for Mel to run into that problem. I guess the only other thing she talks about is her being a medic and healing people, which it's cool, but it's far from interesting. Eventually we come across a true section of stealth and combat with Abby. Everything is new. You don't have Ellie's upgrades, you don't have her guns, everything is reset essentially. Part of me hates this, but on the other hand, you get a couple guns that are only accessible by Abby, so I guess it evens out. The crew then gets to a gas station where we are ambushed by some scars. We take out a whole lot of them until suddenly some WLF comes and helps us. On the way to the base, we see that Mel is injured badly, which makes her unavailable to do missions with us. Like I said, this beginning is very slow. They should have cut quite a bit of this in order for things to be level. Soon after we get to the base, a lot of NPCs are here chatting amongst themselves. You can even interact with the chick that was playing the PSP game. As soon as we meet with Nora, who was tending to Mel, she leads us to a dead body by the name of Danny, the person who was out on patrol with Owen. Apparently, after talking with Isaac, Nora says that Isaac had a look in his eye. Something went down. But when going into the base itself, you see all the torture chambers for Scars, and this stuff is pretty dark in all honesty. Scars chained up, saying prayers to themselves, blood all over the floor. It makes you question if the WLF are doing the right thing. These questions are good when it comes to the narrative storytelling. You want to know why they're doing this. What are they looking for? Why are they even at war? And when we get to Isaac, this man is torturing a butt-ass naked dude. And when we talk with Isaac some more, he says that they are preparing for waves of invasions on the Scars home island. You can clearly see that this dude is hell-bent on control, which is why he's torturing so many people. It also comes to show how hard it is to live in harmony in this world. Either you get run down by infected or get taken out by another group trying to get your territory. But we also find out that Owen shot Danny in order to protect a Scar. This brings another angle into the mix. Is this battle between factions really worth it? And I like this plot point. These people are honestly not so different. It was just the way they were brought up in a fucked up world. One seems cult-like, governed over religion, while the WLF is more like a military authoritarian dictatorship. Owen may have been the first to realize that none of it is worth it, Both factions are bad, so why be a part of it? We then get to see the early relationship between Owen and Abby, now dating. A cute interaction plays out where you see Abby is afraid of heights. Owen baits her by jumping off the Ferris wheel into the water with Abby following suit. The plot of this is important to some degree, considering the relationship between the two is constant throughout the game, but this stuff kind of seems like filler, or at least just a mirror of the relationship between Ellie and Dina. If they had to cut this stuff out, the story would have still been good. I just don't see or feel the need to watch the relationship blossom. As we move forward in the aquarium, we come across a boat with a bunch of drawings from a child. I will say that these drawings are creepy as hell and unsettling, but when looking at these, Owen concludes that this maybe is a family that joined the WLF, and Abby thinks that they may have been killed by scars. Although this is a minor story told in drawings and notes left around, things improve the world building, and understanding this small story brings a small amount of emotion. It is something that I loved about both games in the series. It's their charm, I guess. And moving forward, we see the beauty within the aquarium, the child's drawings everywhere, the colorful nature. It's a small amount of normal in a messed up world. Keep in mind that this is important to Owen. Owen wants normality in his life after the disbanding of the Fireflies, while Abby's the opposite. She doesn't want normal, she only wants revenge, and later you see that. But before then, you get to see the conclusion of the small story of what happened to the kids. Apparently, the kid and their sibling briefly started talking to the Seraphites. The Scar was playing mind games with the children, saying that their father wouldn't be able to protect them for long, that he impedes their independence. This caused the kid to join the Scars while their dad offed himself because he feels like he'd failed them. This shit is dark and unsettling. Like I said, it's a highlight of both games, and it makes you feel bad for these characters that you know nothing about. But going back to what I was talking about regarding Owen and Abby, eventually they get to this fort that the kid built himself. It leads into this dome-like room that has an amazing view of the sea life. After witnessing a seal swim by, the two get intimate but stop. Abby says that even though all the leads dried up with finding Joel, she still is determined and wants to make it back for training. Again, she is hell-bent on finding Joel and seeking revenge. While Owen doesn't like this idea, he wants to be normal again after leaving the Fireflies. I found this connection of revenge between Abby in the past and Ellie in the present somewhat successful. The problem arises when you have a huge climax with Abby and suddenly hit a brick wall with Abby's story. It starts out so slow. It makes the player lose interest quickly, and I know I've said this before, but I just want to say it again, especially when everyone hates Abby at this point. The biggest issue of this game is pacing. It comes with the territory of having two playable characters. With Abby's story just starting out, they should have done something different here. Eventually though, Abby leaves Owen behind to go to training. The game then cuts to Abby in the present / past, whatever you want to call it. It consists of following Manny around, looting buildings, seeing the man's sex den,
Whispering Spanish in my ear?
Hey, that's private.
Oh my god, this is your place? How many sex dens do you have in this QZ?
¿Qué? Perdón, no hablo inglés.
and eventually going on her way alone. While Abby is on her own, I encountered the traditional infected sequences as well as scars. I will say that there was this one part where a clicker just bust through a wall and scared the shit out of me, but for some reason I failed the scripted segment and died, even though I was pushing back on the stick. I was audibly confused when this happened. Maybe it was a bug. Maybe I was just being stupid and didn't push hard enough on the stick. I don't really know. The one thing I will say is that whenever Abby's alone in the level, shit just gets more suspenseful and scarier, mostly from the fact that little dialogue is said, barely any music, and all you hear is the screams of the infected at times. Overall, this game is more horror than the previous one, which is a good thing. Progressing in the narrative, we get to see bits and pieces of what life is like as a Scar. I said before that these guys want nothing to do with the old world. They built their own stuff, such as shelter, appliances, benches, tools, and so forth. They only use the old world technology only when it is convenient. This includes guns, elevators, and so forth. It gets pretty iffy when it comes to their philosophy. It's hard to decipher what their actual goal is. A character we meet later, Lev, gives us some insight, but not enough to the point where it is definitive what their goal is. But at a certain point, Abby gets ambushed and gets captured by the Scars. When this happened, I almost had a heart attack. I was streaming this on Twitch, so enjoy my reaction.
Oh my god!
We then get sent back into the past to another flashback where we meet Owen at his aquarium. We get to see what he has done to the place. He put up Christmas lights, decorations, made a makeshift Everclear machine. He also put up some targets around the place for friendly competitions of Nerf practice. Of course, I mopped the floor in this friendly game and beat Owen and Mel's high score.
Oh, he writes B's weird. What the fuck? Oh, dude, I whipped their asses. This is not even funny.
Owen then shows us a room that he has decorated even more. He gives us some shine, and an awkward thing happens where Abby sees the stockings of Mel and Owen. You can clearly tell that she's super jealous. Abby breaks the news that she has a lead on where Joel might be, a settlement in Wyoming. She explains that some former Fireflies got picked up at the wall coming into Seattle, and after talking to them, that is how she found out about Joel's whereabouts. This is incredibly convenient, and I don't find it a good explanation. I wanted something more complicated, something more in depth, that seems believable, but we didn't get that. It just seems like the writers took a lazier approach to this, thinking that it wouldn't matter much. It just pisses me off. You have this incredibly important character, but his death is treated with such disrespect when it comes to the explanation behind it. A 6-year-old could have come up with this explanation. It's ridiculous, and I guarantee you that most of you would agree, fan or not of the game. Abby even goes as far as to tell Owen that everyone else is behind the idea of going to Wyoming to track him down. Even Mel, who is fucking pregnant. Going along with this, I had a reaction to the reveal on stream, essentially saying that none of this makes sense.
Just because a couple of Fireflies gave him a lead? How? How do they give him that lead?
Hey.
I mean, like he said, it's been fucking...
We're doing this together.
It's been a
right?
decade. So how would they know where he is? That makes no sense.
Clearly, from my reaction, I was not pleased. In no way in hell would they know where Tommy is after a decade of him quitting the Fireflies. Did they meet him recently? Were they trading with him? Did they used to live in a settlement? It's so incredibly convoluted. They needed a lot more explanation behind this, and it's infuriating how careless they were with the writing. Snapping forward to the present, we see Abby get dragged by her feet and gets hung up like the rest of the WLF we see before this. We see the scars are downright brutal with their religious beliefs, carving out sin and so forth. In all honesty, I think I said this before, the scars are more scary than the infected. We then see a girl named Yara get dragged the same way as Abby. The scars brutally hammer the ever-living crap out of her arm, and seeing this made me cringe so hard, not in the manner of making fun of it, but in the manner of, wow, that's gotta hurt.
How do they get to this Ah! God damn!
But all of a sudden, arrows start flying, which takes out most of the scars. While the other scar is looking for the perpetrator, Abby chokes out the remaining scar but F's herself by kicking the bucket literally and suffocating. Luckily, Yara tells the child to cut us down. This child's name is Lev. Lev's story is quite interesting, so keep that in the back of your mind. When we do get cut down, we hear infected scream in the background because of the gunshots that have been fired. So this brings a combat and chase sequence that is super engaging and fun in my opinion. So much suspense is here and the amount of adrenaline I had was immaculate. Soon after, we see the scar that is trying to take out Yara. Because Abby's built like an NFL linebacker, she tackles this offensive lineman, and we open up a can of whoop ass and take our backpack with all of our supplies. For some reason or another, I was so engrossed in the world at this moment. I was screaming, I was rooting for Abby, I was doing all these things, but for what reason? We've already established that Abby's character isn't written very well, so why is this the case? It can be narrowed down to a couple things. 1, maybe it's just because I was streaming and I was trying to be entertaining. 2, even though Abby has bad writing, she's still kind of likable in my eyes. Or 3, I was just simply enjoying myself, getting invested in every combat encounter, stealth section, dialogue sequence, and cutscenes. I believe it was the third option. This is a game where the story becomes masterful only when you ignore the blatant coincidences and plot holes and simply accept them. After all, this is a video game. Not everything is going to be realistic. If that was the case, the game would have been 70 hours long for a single narrative story. So at this point, I was just accepting what was happening, and because of that, I wanted to keep playing. Then again, it could just be the other 2 options and I just wasn't being aware, so whatever, I guess. Later, we get brought to this weird, rundown house with a whole bunch of infected flooding in. We give a boost to Yara and Lev to get out, and they tell us that they're gonna find another way for Abby to get out of there. So while this is happening, you battle loads and loads of infected until they eventually get you out of there. This shit takes forever, but in a good way. I was getting overwhelmed, losing ammo, losing health because I didn't have the time to heal myself. Abby even says at one point that she thought they abandoned her, which is why it was taking so long. But soon we see Lev motion us to her and we get on our way. Sitting outside is Yara, clearly in a lot of pain. Pick her up while Lev finds an RV where we can set her down safely. We reset her bone, make a splint, and we leave the 2 alone, thanking them for cutting us down. This causes us to continue our search for Owen alone. During this time, nothing of narrative importance happens. We just battle some infected here and there, on land and on boat. On this boat though, we did find a crossbow, which was extremely helpful in trying to be better in stealth. Not to mention that the atmosphere on this wrecked boat was well done. Things were scary, dark, and I felt claustrophobic. But we then finally find Owen after breaking into the aquarium. This dude is still drinking his shine and he seems depressed. After Abby asks him what happened, Owen tells us that he encountered an old scar. After hitting the scar hard on the head and sending him to the ground, the scar didn't reach for his gun. Didn't defend himself, didn't do anything. He accepted his death and was ready. This caused Owen to feel sympathy and not take out this scar. This caused his partner Danny to get heated, which resulted in shots being fired and taking out Danny. Ever since then, Owen hid out at his aquarium, telling Abby that he doesn't want to do any fighting anymore. Again, he just wants to have a normal life. Not to mention, Abby ran into this sort of same experience. She got saved by Scars and helped them to safety. This causes her to tell Owen that she could fix what had been done, to take Owen back to the camp and explain everything to Isaac. But for some reason, after they stop arguing, they get physical with each other, and Owen just claps Abby's cheeks. What?
What in the musty ass?
After is a dream sequence, the same one that plays every time where Abby sees her dead father, but this time she sees Lev and Yara hung. This causes her to wake up and try to find them. She feels an obligation to help them after hearing Owen's story. She's starting to believe Owen's philosophy. I personally like this plot point because it's going to be direct comparison to Ellie and Joel. There are some things I don't like, sure, but at this point I'm starting to see what the writers are trying to do, putting Abby in Joel's shoes. We of course get to Lev and Yara. They're still here, but Yara is in critical condition. It also seems like Scars know exactly where they are, so it's of the utmost importance to get them out of there as quickly as possible. The screen was cut to black and we made it back to Owen's aquarium. We met with Owen and this dog that Ellie offed previously. Mel then walks into the room. Everyone's surprised to see Abby with scars. Rightfully so. We find out that Yara's arm is completely shattered and needs to be cut off. This gives Abby another mission: to find the right supplies in order to do so, which is located at the main hospital where Nora was at when we played as Ellie. But since getting there normally would take a long time, and Yara only has like at most a day, Lev says that Scars have secret passageways on skyscrapers that help them get to places quicker. Knowing this, Abby and Lev go on their way. Part of me understands this, of course, but why is Mel automatically willing to help these Scars? She's voiced that she doesn't like them, so just because they helped Abby, that means that Elle's going to help them? We learn later in the game that Mel isn't exactly fond of Abby, so literally none of this makes sense, but oh well. On our way back to the hospital, some dialogue happens where Abby and Lev get relatively close with one another, with Abby teaching Lev some English lingo, and Lev teaching Abby thoughts and beliefs of the Scars. Though not too in-depth, which I get frustrated with, I still like how Lev gives a tad bit of insight. While traversing with Lev, we get to see Abby's phobia: heights. Can I be completely honest with you? I don't care about this. They've been showing this throughout the story as if it means something. Like, sure, you want to convey Abby's personality. This is something very important to storytelling, but something as simple as continuously showing Abby's phobia of heights means nothing to the narrative. It just feels like filler dialogue in a way to show a set piece. Like, do the writers know that you can show a set piece without showing meaningless personality traits? It took so fucking long to cross this bridge that sits on a crane. I get that you want to be careful crossing this shit, totally, but this takes so long, man. It honestly feels like 30 minutes even though it was 5. The writers were trying to make Abby relatable, but that falls apart when she literally offed one of the most beloved characters in gaming. I will say that Lev is the person that's growing on me. He mentions that he shaved his head, which in turn caused the Scars to go after him, so with intuition you can conclude that Lev is transgender. I really don't want to hear "this is woke" cause it isn't. Woke culture, and I quote, is the promotion of liberal progressive ideology and policy as an expression of sensitivity to systemic injustices and prejudices. And this is a direct quote from dictionary.com, so take that as you will. What Lev is feeling isn't a progressive ideology. It's just a personal feeling he has within himself. Not to mention, this plot with Lev isn't even shoved down your throat. It's only mentioned in depth twice in the game. Once with little backstory before we traverse the bridge with Lev, and another more in-depth with Yara. And even then, it's a 2-minute cutscene. The woke culture that you claim to be in this game is barely touched on. What I'm saying here is, if you hate the game simply because it's woke, you have the wrong explanation as to why you hate the game. Take this example. In The Witcher 3, one of the most acclaimed games ever made, Geralt literally bangs 70% of the women population in the game. Now replace the woman with men. Are you now just going to hate the game simply because of that, stating that it's woke? Are you going to completely disregard the amazing story that it has because of it being woke and call it a trash game? This is what I mean when I say that using the term woke to say that a game's bad is such a horrible take. The Last of Us has a lot of problems, but it isn't woke. They're just including characters that are part of the LGBTQ community. Big whoop. So what? Just play the fucking game and understand the story. Totally hating the game because of what I stated just makes you look transphobic. And keep in mind, and I've said this before at the beginning, I went through 5 years of university studying fiction writing, screenwriting, film criticism, whatever it is. The shit that you're complaining about has been in the industry far longer than you've been alive. This isn't a new thing, so stop using this bullshit excuse. Anyways, straying from my tangent, Lev's character is pretty cool. He says that fear is a way to make a person stronger, trying to cheer up Abby, saying that being scared makes you faster, stronger, smarter, and more in tune with your surroundings. The Seraphites taught her that. With this backstory, it really makes me question who is more in the right here, the Scars, the WLF. They're both only fighting about land. The only difference is the ideologies. Scars are more religious in nature, the WLF are more dominance oriented, meaning with more land they cover, the safer things will be along with more supplies. And keep in mind that these two factions both had peace before. This means that they can certainly stand each other, it's just a matter of who is more selfish. Eventually, Abby slips on the bridge and falls into the pool that's located in the hospital. A part of the hospital that hasn't been cleared out of infected. This means spooky time that I'm not ready for. If y'all don't know me, I don't do well with horror games, horror in general, actually. So for some of this, I had to actually take my headphones off and play. Some interesting conversations happened though during our exploration. Lev says that some WLF members believe in God and pray, just like the Seraphites. She then asks Abby if she believes, and her answer is no. It's not important at all, but these conversations always interest me for some reason. Also, somewhat brings a connection to the WLF and Scars. Going deeper, we come across some spores, but Lev didn't have a mask. He escaped the Scars quickly and wasn't thinking about grabbing one. So now it's up to us to find one for him deep down in this infected section of the game. This part of the level was insanely terrifying to me. There's fungus everywhere, infected around every corner. Some stalkers even burrowed in some of the fungus on the wall and just jump scare you out of nowhere. But we eventually find a mask for Lev, and we give it to him, and we clear out the rest of the infected in the area. When we get out, a conversation plays on if Lev has any regrets of shaving his head. He states that Seraphites aren't supposed to have any regrets, that he wishes he would have just run away and not have gotten Yara involved with any of it. So, Lev actually does have regrets but doesn't want to admit it. This is an interesting deep dive into what Lev is thinking. He cares for Yara deeply, although he doesn't regret shaving his head, he does regret getting the people he loved involved. It's sad and understandable, and like I said, Lev's kind of growing on me. But then we get to the hospital where the potential supplies are at. Abby tells Lev to stay put or else surely the WLF are going to take him out. Abby goes through the gate, tells the soldiers a lie on why she's at the outpost, and goes around looking for supplies. But since the guards at the gate are assholes and snitched on us, Abby gets locked up and is getting prepped to be taken back to the FOB where Isaac is. But Nora then comes into the picture and frees us from the cuffs. Abby tells Nora that Owen is the one with the bashed arm and needs some medical supplies. Nora states that the only sort of supplies she can get is deep into the hospital where the outbreak first started in the city, meaning that it's going to be pretty rough down there, so with that, Nora leads us there. When you're down in the depths of the hospital, there are locked doors that you need a generator to power, and behind these doors are loads of infected. So when you eventually do unlock these said doors, you have to deal with all of them. Not too big of a deal, right? Well, after getting the supplies out of an ambulance, you come across this gross, huge, intimidating, scary looking infected. This initiates a chase sequence which then in turn leads to a boss fight. This dude is so damn hard to take down. I had limited amounts of ammo here, and trying to scavenge the area for more was like finding a needle in a haystack. To make it worse, after you defeat the boss, a smaller infected crawls out of it and you have to take that thing down. Granted, he isn't as hard as the big dude. Pause. It's still a bitch to try and take him out since his invisible health bar is just never ending. So when we get topside, Lev pulls us aside since there's a whole bunch of WLF soldiers walking around. But we did see a boat to the side and take that instead. Thank God, because I would not survived. I don't even think I had any animal left after that encounter with the big dude. When we get to the aquarium, we see Lev and Abby sitting down petting the doggo. At this point, I was thinking deeply about the story, and for somewhat reason, I feel like Abby's segment in this game takes so much time, and a whole lot of it is boring in all honesty. Want to know why I'm not going into depth with the small conversations with characters during this gameplay? It's because it's either one, meaningless, or two, it's a boring conversation with no dialogue had. Why is it that in the first game, this was the highlight, but here it's all but missing? It makes me so mad. Not to mention, they make Abby out to be this such amazing person, caring for Scars, caring about all their friends, petting dogs, and so forth. But when we play as Ellie, she feels like a piece of shit. Ellie constantly kills animals, disregards her friends for the sake of revenge, is a total asshole to Joel for years, not even wanting to ask why he did what he did, and later in the game, well, we'll get there eventually. The game had a clear agenda that they were trying to convey, and it was executed so poorly. I don't care about Abby being a good person. Though she's a likable character, it's there's something about her that is so off-putting. She took out Joel. That in my mind makes her a bad person. On Ellie's side, it just feels like her whole personality flipped. She's no longer this funny, energetic, loudmouth girl. She's brain dead, vengeful, selfish, and an asshole. And I know I said before that I kind of understand her personality change, but after progressing hours into the story, I totally agree with the people that don't like her as a character anymore. I think the majority of this game's problems would have been fixed if we had less screen time of Abby, less coincidences, more engaging dialogue during combat, and better pacing. Playing this game again for an analysis made me extremely frustrated, but regardless, we see that Yara is okay. A dream sequence happens again, geez, and we see that Abby's dad is there waiting for her, signifying that she has found peace with his death. When Abby wakes up, she talks to Mel, and I'm going to let this play and I have a few serious words after.
She's not going to come with you. Convince her. We broke the rules. That's all you care about.
Owen?
Just me. What are you still doing up?
I was changing Yara's bandages.
Can't believe she's on her feet already.
Yeah, well, scars are tough.
I can get there and back. No,
What are they fighting about?
fuck you, Yara. I wouldn't leave you behind.
Lev doesn't want to leave Seattle. Owen invited them to come to Santa Barbara.
That is very Owen. I figured you'd have talked him out of going by now.
Actually, I'm going with them. But not if you come.
What?
He may fall for your little act with these kids, but I don't.
There's nothing to fall for.
Isaac's top scar killer suddenly had a change of heart. Nothing to do with Owen. Right.
I haven't always done the right thing.
You're a piece of shit, Abby. You always have been. I'm done with you. You want to do right by these kids? Get out of their lives before you screw them over too.
So Mel calls Abby a piece of shit for ruining people's lives. Now put this into perspective. Mel literally went into a battlefield multiple times knowing she had Owen's kid. She put herself in danger by going to Wyoming while pregnant. She also had a hand in Joel's death, which also makes her a piece of shit. She assumed Abby did this for Owen's sake, which makes her selfish and also a piece of shit. Everything Mel does endangers herself, her child, and Owen. She doesn't care about Owen if she consistently puts herself in dangerous situations, jeopardizing a potential family. I hate Mel with a passion, and this isn't intentional writing. Let me be clear. This is very bad writing on Druckmann's part. They want you to care about Mel simply because she's pregnant, the same as Dina. And in drawing that connection, this is what will get you to care about this character. No. After this, we meet with Yara, and she says that the argument was about her and Lev's mom. Lev wants to go back and explain to his mom how he feels inside. Yara thinks that this is a bad idea, and it is. Yara says that parents are sometimes held responsible for the sins of their child. This is why it's extremely dangerous for Lev to go back home. Either he will be killed by his mother because she's extremely loyal to the Scars, or he will be turned over to the elders and they will decide Lev's fate. Also, we find out that Lev was given the job of getting married off to the elders instead of becoming a soldier like Yara, and this caused Lev to cut his hair to be like the men so he wouldn't have to be married off. Soon after, we get confronted by Owen. This whole thing, in all honesty, was quite cringe. He only states that he wants Abby to go to Santa Barbara with him, even though Mel is against the idea. This in turn makes Owen a horrible person and unlikable because he cheated on Mel, who's about to have a baby and is trying to convince Abby that everything is going to be okay. This whole pregnant plotline that involves Owen, Mel, and Abby is just so uninteresting and not needed. I'll touch on this more in a couple minutes. After, we see Lev stupidly go back to the same island that he was so desperately wanting to leave, and even told Abby his only regret was to leave and not tell anybody. So seeing this dude leave makes no sense. To add on to this, when Owen says that he'll go with Abby to find Lev, Abby says, "Get your priorities straight." Dude, you literally slept with him and fucked up his and Mel's relationship. Get your priorities straight. This whole sequence is just so cringe and so bad. It was not needed in the slightest, and it makes me hate all of these characters even more. While we're walking to try and find a boat to be able to make it to where Lev is, Abby and Yara hear some gunshots, which causes Abby to yell to Yara to stay behind. When we get topside, we see Manny, who I guess coincidentally is there. A sniper took out a squad. He's trying to find out who this dude is and take him out. And of course, we know this dude's Tommy. Anyone who's played this game literally figured that out way too fast. Tommy continuously shoots at us, making it difficult to press forward. He even shoots at cars to draw infected toward us. When we do eventually get to where he is, he just offs Manny, the same way as Jesse. Are we like gonna get any relationships going with other characters not named Dina or Lev? And they're trying so hard to connect the two. Though Abby does confront Tommy, they fight eventually. Yara stuns him so Abby can push him off the edge of the railing. And I swear Tommy has the strongest plot armor in this entire game. It's not even funny anymore. All of this is quite ridiculous, how much the plot armor these guys have, until eventually one of them gets killed off stupidly. When we eventually get to the island the Seraphites inhabit, we see indications that the invasion of the WLF is about to happen soon. And because of this, there are lots of scars that we need to clear. Apart from this, nothing noteworthy in dialogue happens as usual, mostly just about senseless nonsense about Seraphite religion and everyday life for them. Though it is interesting, it isn't enough to feel the need to talk about it. Abby and Yara finally get to the house that Yara's mom lived in. They both find her dead with Lev sitting in the corner. Lev tells us that he offed his mom because she wouldn't stop chasing him. Things got violent and ultimately Lev had to defend himself. Though I'm not entirely connected with Yara and Lev just yet, you can't help but feel sorry for the kid. He just wanted his mom to love him for who he is, but I still have to be honest. Lev shouldn't have even gone to the island in the first place, when just before he told Abby his only regret was leaving the island and not telling anyone. So yes, this is an emotional scene, but it gets taken away from a plot hole. And to make matters worse, the trio get cornered by WLF soldiers. Yara just gets offed the same way as Jesse, which feels like a slap in the face to her character. We never get close to her. We never got to understand most of her background. We never even got the chance to make a decision on if she was a good character or not. She feels wasted, like the writers put no thought behind her at all. All of a sudden, Isaac comes strolling out, tells Abby to stand down, but since Yara isn't dead yet, I guess, she shoots Isaac, offs him, and then she finally dies. Everything here was so rushed and jumbled to the point where I had no idea what was happening. It sucks that these potentially interesting characters are gone just like that. The narrative story beats in this game rely heavily on surprise rather than suspense, which is a problem. But because the game wants a huge emotional scene behind this, Lev asks why Abby took out her fellow soldiers, her people. Abby simply responds by saying Lev is her people now. This connection between the two characters just happens so incredibly fast in a matter of days in game. Keep in mind it took traveling across the country, months of getting to know each other, and countless barriers for Joel and Ellie to connect. Comparing that to this, wow. Saying it is anything but rushed is wrong. After this is countless amounts of shooting galleries and stealth sections. These aren't tremendous in any way, it's just the stuff we've been seeing the entire game, and keep in mind, as I've said before, there isn't much dialogue happening in these segments, but eventually we did get to the town Haven, a place where most scars reside. We also see that this place is entirely on fire, and there is a sequence that plays where we fight this behemoth of a man that refuses to get taken down. You slash his face, punch him in over and over, stab him, and it takes so much for this guy to finally go down. But when he does so, Lev and Abby find a boat and get the hell out of Dodge to finally get back to the aquarium. Here, you all know what happens. I have a reaction to this, so I'm gonna let it play. Trust me, it shows my disappointment.
Wait, whoa, wait. I forgot she dropped the map. What a fucking convenient thing to happen. What a fucking convenient thing to happen. Wow. Okay. Wow.
So clearly the map being on the ground is a huge coincidence. One that doesn't seem believable. One that furthers the plot with no deep thought behind it. One that disappoints me so much when it comes to the direction of this game. They could have done this many different ways. Ellie had to literally track every single person down from Abby's group in this game, and even then, she never even found Abby by herself. But when Abby wants to find Ellie, it's handed to her on a silver platter? What the actual fuck is this game doing? So incredibly rushed when it comes to story moments, and during gameplay it's so incredibly slow. The pacing is god-awful in this game to where I actively wanted to stop playing. But this brings Abby to the theater where Tommy, Jesse, Dina, and Abby are. You pretty much just have to find a way into the theater, and the same cutscene plays of Abby offing Jesse and having a gun pointed at Ellie and Tommy. When things escalate, Abby shoots Tommy in the head, but don't worry, since Tommy has tremendous plot armor, he survives yet again, and you'll see during the ending of the game. But after the cutscene, there is a boss fight. This is similar to the David boss fight in part 1. You must sneak around and not make noise, catch Ellie by surprise, and get a good couple of hits in. During this, I wanted Ellie to take me out. I didn't even want to engage in the boss fight. When this happens, you know you structured your game wrong. And to make everything much worse, Abby's about to off Dina and Ellie, but she just stops only because Lev told her to. That makes it 2 times where Abby spared Ellie, even when Abby knows all too well that Ellie will come after her again. It's so stupid. And the whole pregnancy plot was only to draw a connection with Dina, in which Abby understands this and doesn't kill Dina. Like, bro, at this point, I just don't like Abby or Ellie. Their characters were written so piss poor, Naughty Dog dropped the ball so incredibly hard. After, we cut to Ellie back in Jackson with Dina and their child, JJ. It almost seems like a dream sequence, a life Ellie finally wants. We spent time with the baby, we danced with Dina, we get JJ's favorite toy, we also heard some cute sheep. Some normal farm type shit. It's like Red Dead and its sheep herding minigame. But when we get into the shed, Ellie has PTSD of when Joel died. This is understandable for sure, but it all falls apart when the next scenes we have is when Tommy tells Ellie he knows where Abby is. For one, how the fuck is Tommy alive? He gets shot in the head and it's just unbelievable. Next, why on earth would Ellie go after Abby again? She has the life she always wanted, a family, people who love her. Why would she risk that all to seek revenge another time? What the fuck? This game feels so unbearably long as it is. Now you want to add on game time from the result of coincidences and unnecessary plot points? Regardless, Ellie wakes up from a sleepless night, goes to her guitar, and a flashback happens. This flashback was a trailer from the game before it came out, I believe. It shows Ellie and Dina getting romantic, the dude that was a bigot, and Joel stepping in and Ellie being a complete asshole to him. This scene is important for the end of the game, so I'll save my thoughts on this until then. After this cutscene, Dina finds Ellie packing in the kitchen. To keep it short, Dina begs Ellie to stay, but Ellie won't listen and she goes on her own way. What I don't understand is, why doesn't Dina have a direct conversation with Ellie about how she's feeling? Like, yes, in Ellie's journal, it's revealed Dina wants Ellie to talk about things, but at this moment, why not force her to talk about it? Show Ellie that you fucking care. You just let her up and leave when you damn well know how she's feeling? Unbelievable. After this, we go back to Abby's point of view in Santa Barbara. You loot houses, talk senseless nonsense with Lev, and find the Firefly outpost Owen was talking about. Here, Abby contacts the Fireflies and they say to go to a certain location and meet them there. And when we get out of the garage, Abby gets jumped and Lev gets his shit rocked so incredibly hard, he get knocked out cold.
Damn!
This brings us to another perspective switch where Ellie trying to find Abby in Santa Barbara. Here you traverse the desert looking area, going house to house, looting, fighting infected, and hear Ellie constantly talking about finding Abby. But we get to a part where Ellie steps on a booby trap and gets strung upside down and getting stabbed by a tree branch. Ellie eventually passes out and an unknown time has passed. In all honesty, wouldn't she have like bled out, died from being upside down for too long? I don't know, it just seems like either people have unnecessary plot armor or die suddenly. It's a guessing game. Some people walk up, badass Santa and Logic the Rapper. Here, they mess with Ellie, cut her down, and of course Ellie has something nasty to say to them. This causes Logic to fuck with her and ultimately meets his demise by Ellie pushing him into an infected that ran into the same trap as her. She also shoots Santa in the leg. Ellie asks Santa where Abby is. He states that if she lets him live, he'll tell her where Abby is. After telling Ellie, Ellie just offs him with no hesitation. It is also worth mentioning that she gets bitten by the infected, but since she's immune, nothing happens to her. But from here on out, you'll fight this faction called the Rattlers. These guys have no depth to them, no story to tell, and it's only shown that they're slavers that capture people. I will say these combat sequences with them are dope as hell. You get a suppressed submachine gun, and taking these guys out feels like playing The Last of Us and Call of Duty mixed. It's an odd mixture, sure, but it's hella fun. Not to mention the level layout gives plenty of opportunities to you. You can stealth and go underneath cars, fences, and so forth. You can go guns blazing with a submachine gun, you can free some chained up infected and they'll go after the Rattlers. There's so many things that you do in this section, but in all honesty, this feels like the only new addition to the combat compared to the previous game, other than proning. If it isn't broken, don't fix it, but I'm disappointed that they didn't add enough new things, enemy types, and so forth. But we get close to Abby's location. After creating a diversion by freeing some captured people that led a jailbreak, we make it towards the beach where Abby's tied up to a wooden pole with Lev across from her. Ellie surprisingly cuts her down, looks at her very creepy like, and we follow her carrying Lev to the beach. So Ellie being a horrible person and putting a knife to Lev's throat, in which I never thought Ellie would do, the final fight of the game breaks out. I don't know what to say anymore. The Ellie I knew would never put a knife to a child, especially after taking out Mel, who was pregnant and also having a child of her own. It just makes no sense, being vengeful or not. But we must live with it. After a brutal fight that wasn't hard at all, Ellie is on the brink of drowning Abby, but fucking stops and tells her to leave. What the hell was the point of the whole section then? You already messed up the story, might as well finish the job here. I'm done trying to decipher all of these cutscenes. I'm actually pissed that this has happened. Throughout this game, I was having a decent time. Yes, some shitty story beats happened early on, but it was manageable, minus Joel's death. But this later half of the game sucks total butt. They dropped the ball hard, not even close to the bar the first game set. So after Ellie loses a couple of fingers fighting Abby and watches her leave, we cut back to the farm. Here you can explore the house for a bit. See that everything is gone because Dina moved out? Ellie literally lost everything only for her to let Abby live. Jesus Christ. I guess the highlight of this ending was the flashback scene that made me tear up a bit, I guess.
What are you drinking?
Coffee.
Where'd you get that?
Those people that came through last week.
Oh.
A little embarrassed as to what I had to trade to get it, but it's not bad.
I had Seth under control.
Yeah, I know.
And you need to stop harassing Jesse about my patrols.
Okay. Dina. Is she your girlfriend?
No. No, that was just one kiss. It doesn't mean anything. I don't know why she did that.
But you do like her.
So stupid.
I have no idea what that girl's intentions are, but I do know that she would be lucky to have you.
You're such an asshole.
I'm not trying to.
I was supposed to die in that hospital. My life would have fucking mattered. But you took that from me.
If somehow the Lord gave me a second chance at that moment, I would do it all over again.
I don't think I can ever forgive you for that. But I would like to try.
I'd like that.
Okay. I'll see you around.
Yep.
So, as we can see, before Joel's death, Ellie confronted Joel and made peace with his decision to save her, and she was willing to understand why he did and what he did. Though I don't think this ending was the greatest, at least it was well thought out scene that sends Ellie on a quest to let the past go. This results in the end of the game, the end of The Last of Us Part 2. Since the combat is the same with only a few new additions to the game, this section is mostly going to be about the pros and cons of the game, going into depth about what I did and didn't like. So first things first, the pros. The combat is amazing, fluid, brutal, and fun to engage with. Even though there wasn't anything new added besides the cool ass weapon customization and proning, the gameplay still felt new and innovative. The world felt so lived in and run down. It felt so immersive and scary at points, to the point where I had to take my headphones off because my scary meter was off the charts. The flashback scenes of Ellie and Joel, specifically the museum one, that one was very emotional and it felt like old times, something I wish the whole game was like. Finally, I like the new faction, the Scars. These guys felt more menacing than even the Infected. They were brutal, or religion driven, and the TV building level was out of this world. It felt like something that would actually happen during a zombie apocalypse. Now the cons. The crazy number of coincidences. Abby finding Joel was a result of a half-assed response of, "We picked up some fireflies at the wall." Okay, well, what did he say? Did they see Tommy recently? Nothing about it was explained properly. Abby finding Ellie, Tommy, and Jesse because Ellie dropped her map. Abby finding Joel unexpectedly was a horrible coincidence. Ellie finding Abby in Santa Barbara because Tommy gave a half-assed excuse was also a coincidence. Do you see what I'm saying? There is just too many for this game to be considered believable. The pregnancy plotline. Why would Dina go with Ellie knowing she's possibly pregnant? Same with Mel going on runs when she is clearly pregnant. This is stupid. All in the name of drawing a connection between Dina and Mel. I didn't care about Mel at all. I barely cared about Dina because we didn't spend enough time with her. Everything was so jumbled and horribly paced. This brings me to pacing. The jump between Ellie to Abby completely messed up the pacing. They ramped up Ellie's part so much to the point when we play as Abby, it feels like we hit a brick wall and everything goes downhill from there. Ellie going after Abby again was a horrible decision. It makes no sense. Tommy comes out of nowhere to say he found Abby even though Ellie has everything she has ever wanted at this point. To make it worse, concluding the story, Ellie lets Abby live. Tommy was a horribly written character in the game. For example, he tells Ellie that he doesn't want her to go after Abby, and after Ellie convinces him that they should do it, knowing Ellie is going to go no matter what, he leaves Ellie behind to go by himself and puts Ellie in danger. This doesn't align with his original character. Also at the end, he does a full 180 by bullying Ellie into chasing after Abby, even though at the beginning of the game he was so adamant about not letting Ellie go. Like, what the hell? Lev and Abby's connection was incredibly rushed and was only a means to draw a connection between Joel and Ellie's relationship. It wasn't believable that they got this close in a matter of days when it took Joel and Ellie literally months to get to that point. There are so many cons, it would make up an entire other video naming them off. The game just falls completely flat in the narrative department. It is embarrassing dropping the ball this hard. To conclude this video, I just want to say I'm a huge fan of The Last of Us world. I even have the exact same tattoo as Ellie, I love these characters so much. You can even say that I'm a fanboy, but me coming out and saying this game is bad should speak volumes. Before doing this analysis, I loved part 2 and I refused to hear anybody else's criticisms about the game. But after analyzing every scene, every plot point, every combat encounter, my opinion changed. This game felt rushed, there were too many coincidences, too many unnecessary deaths, and the death of Joel was a spit in the face to the fans. So without further ado, let's get on with the ratings. At the bottom is not even close. This is when a game falls completely flat on its face and is nowhere near a masterpiece. It has a lot of work to do, and even then, I don't think it could fix the game. Next is it has potential. This is when both positives and negatives are strong, but ultimately, the negatives far outweigh the positives. Maybe a DLC can add some good to the game. Next is amazing. This is when the game is really good and the positives outweigh the negatives, but because the negatives are a little too many, the game isn't a masterpiece. At the top is masterpiece. This is when the game is masterclass, has barely any issues, and has a place in the Gaming Hall of Fame. So, what is The Last of Us Part 2? Before this analysis, I would have rated it masterpiece, but after playing it for this video, I'm gonna have to rate it it has potential. The game isn't awful to fully deserve the not even close rating. The game has good combat, good world design, and good exploration, but because the narrative is badly written, the pacing is bad, and the characters aren't interesting, it causes this game to have the it has potential rating. Hopefully, if they make The Last of Us Part 3, it will be better than this travesty. Thank you guys so much for watching my videos. I've been doing school and work, so if you see the uploads becoming slower, that's why. Also, if you guys love my live stream inclusion in my videos, let me know and I'll do more of it. My next video is either going to be Halo 2 or one of the Assassin's Creed games not named Origins Valhalla or Odyssey. It will most likely be from the Ezio trilogy, the Kenry games, or Unity. Let me know what you guys want to see more of. Also, if you guys want to see like the Jak and Daxter games, I'm more than happy to do that. I kind of want to go back to the oldies. Anyways, I'll see you guys later. Have a good one. Peace out.